yet.
What?
We're good.
Well,
Better mute my
are
phone
you in?
here.
I'm not, but that's okay.
All right, welcome to Improvement and Services. Today is May 11th. We will take roll call. I, the chair, Mark Stoyer. Alder Stoyer is here. Alder Weary is here. Alder Eck
Here.
and Alder Campbell.
Here.
All present and accounted for. I would entertain an approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
by Eck, seconded by Campbell. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, that passes unanimously. Approval of the minutes, entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Moved by Weary, seconded
Second.
by Eck. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, that passes unanimously. Anything that is discussed here at tonight will be going to City Council, and that'll be next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. It'll be in-person meeting, or I believe you can still Zoom in if need be. So anything that's, this is just an action of the committee, but it will go for final approval at council next Tuesday. So, regular business, number 1, consideration with possible action on finding solutions to lessen trash along West Mason / Highway 54 from Packerland to the city limits. Alder Brunette is here. Would you like to start? And I know Supervisor Buckley is here as well, so.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I would encourage the committee to open the floor. It's not only Supervisor Buckley here, but Randy Griswold, who's the president of the Neighborhood Association in that area. So basically, over the last few years, well, longer even, but trash along West Mason Street, which becomes Highway 54 from, say, Packerland all the way to the city limits, but more specifically near the city limits where the speed of the road increases. There's a lot of trash that has collected over the years in the median and on the sides of the road. The Fridge Park Neighborhood Association values that community, like beautification. Different times they have attempted to clean up the highway, the road, and have been successful, but it's really fighting a losing battle because as they pick it up, there's more. And typically, from what I can gather, trucks that go to the transfer station along that route are not always covered, and there's issues with enforcement. Are cops going to pull over? Can they pull over? Should they pull over trucks going to the transfer station? So Director Gurdier and I did discuss this yesterday or the day before, and he has some ideas, of course, and so what I would encourage the committee to do is hear from the gentleman here, and then if you have any questions for me, let me know. But I really want some strategy, some plan, because it is a mess. And we talk about sustainability, wildlife. It's not good to have clutter like that on the sides of the road. If there's anything the city can do that's reasonable to cut down on it, I think it would be greatly appreciated. It's a complaint. I get quite a few complaints about it, so.
Well, thank you, Alder Burnett.
Yes, sir.
Entertain a motion to open the floor.
Motion to open the floor for district parties.
Just by
Second.
Alder Weary, seconded by Eck. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, the floor is now open. Come on forward, just state your name and address for the record, and we're here for you to listen.
Well, thank you, committee, for giving us the opportunity to speak. My name is Randy Griswold. I live at 1041 Village Green Court in Green Bay. It's the western edge of the city, just east of Double F. I've been president of the Fridge Park Neighborhood Association now for approximately, I think I'm approaching 5 years, maybe 6. It's supposed to be a 2-year stint, but we all know how that goes.
You're a veteran.
Well,
I know the feeling.
Yes.
I'm aged with how that goes. Yeah.
Sure, that's fine.
So anyway, just to kind of cut to the quick on the whole thing, we started, one of the events that we try and do throughout the years, we try and do a spring cleanup, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
We've been doing a spring cleanup now for about the 5 years since I've been president. And the spring cleanup typically consists of volunteers from our neighborhood. We pick a Saturday, typically in early May. We try and do it from 8 o'clock in the morning until about 12, 1 o'clock, so it doesn't take the entire day. And then I drive the Fridge Park residential area, which consists of Fridge Park, the Red Fox subdivision, and then the Deer Trail Park subdivision, which comes off of Country Club Road. That's basically the geographic confines of our neighborhood. I drive those residential streets typically a week or so ahead of time to see if there's any areas that we need to pick up. Rarely do we have to literally pick up trash in these residential streets. The neighbors, the residents there are very, very, very good about keeping their properties up. So the next thing is, so what's the next area? And it's perennially the section of West Mason, typically from Country Club, and again, our geographical boundary is double F, so we're not going to go any farther west than that. The area between Packerland and Country Club is basically on the north side is the NWTC frontage. They do a very, very good job of keeping that up. I mean, and I drive that street obviously many, many, many times a day. So I'm always looking. The litter on that portion of West Mason really is not an eyesore. It's really not a problem. And I would commend NWTC for what they do with regard to that. But starting from Country Club out to double F, it's a real problem for us. So for about 5 years now, on a Saturday morning, we've been trying to turn it into an event. This year, when I posed it to my board in March that we would select again that area in early May, to my surprise, our board said we don't want to do it anymore. And basically for two reasons. First off, it's dangerous to have volunteers out there, and some of these parents are actually bringing their kids as a part of this event because it's a nice neighborly thing to do. It's a good gesture on the part of a parent to it with a child. So they don't want to bring their children anymore for obvious reasons. We give them safety vests. You know, we try and keep it as safe as we can. We cannot stop the traffic. We've tried to see if we can divert the traffic one lane over to the south so that, and we've tried to do that, but we've been doing that basically hoping nobody gets hit. I mean, the police department hasn't, we haven't even asked the police department to help us because, you know, I think they're so short, they would just say, hey, we don't have the manpower to do it. So make a long story short, I have a board now that's basically said it's just too risky, we really don't want to do it, and it seems to be a never-ending task. That's just a perennial thing. So we are looking for a long-term solution. So at that point, I contacted Supervisor Buckley, who represents our part of the city. Pat and I have had a good relationship for a number of years. I explained the situation, and Pat basically said, well, let me look into it, and we'll get back to you. A few weeks later, he gets back to me, and to our surprise, apparently there is a formal relationship with the transfer station and another community in this area, but not with the city of Green Bay. So I guess the logical question is, well, why are they doing it there, but why are we not doing it in the city of Green Bay as a possible option? Most recently, ironically, as this meeting approaches, ironically, I noticed over the last several days that the litter along that section of West Mason is noticeably improved. So I don't know what's been going on, but somebody's picking up litter. And then, to my surprise, about 2 days ago, as I'm traveling westbound on West Mason to my home, I saw a guy, he had a vest on, he actually had a gator-like vehicle with a bin in the front, fairly large bin, to collect trash. I didn't know if he was the city employee or what, but I called up Mr. Buckley, and I also sent a note to Alder Brunette that somebody's doing it, I don't know who it is, and I wanted to extend my compliments and gratitude to whoever was the responsible party for that. And I don't know if it was part of the DPW staffing to do any of this, but it's noticeably improved. So we're happy about that, but we would really prefer a long-term solution, and that's basically all I'm asking for on behalf of our neighborhood association. Any questions on what I've said?
Just one I wanted to ask. I mean, you're saying that the litter is quite a bit west of Country Club to double F, correct?
Yeah.
So is some of that, do you think, from the trucks that are coming in to the transfer station? Some of that?
Yeah, there's no question. I have photos on file from the previous 4 or 5 years that we've collected, because we typically publish this in our newsletter just as a thank you. I have a photo on file where we picked up 5 or 6 huge bags of trash. I mean, these were big, large trash bags, and some foam insulation. Some of the pieces were as big as 4x4. I mean, it's clearly commercial trash.
So most of it is coming from that, you would think.
Yeah. I mean, we pick up an occasional beer bottle or a can or something like that. Yeah, you would expect that. But the nature of the trash seems to be related to that transfer station to some degree.
Because I know there's a frontage road on the north end, and there's a bar there, and there's a couple of houses, but it's not that bad along there.
No, it's really not. Not in that. No,
Right.
And it seems to be worst from LeCount to double F, because as you travel west from LeCount to double F, there is a large berm of growth, shrubs, bushes, and that traps a lot of that litter as a result of the wind going from south to north.
Usually from winter to spring, I've seen that in my area too, where things just pile up in the trees and stuff like that, and you have to clean it up kind of. So.
Well,
committee-
again, it's not a perfect world, we understand that,
Right.
but I just cannot promise that our neighborhood association is gonna try and continue to do this as
Okay.
a
Well, I
long-term
appreciate your
solution.
efforts. I do.
Well,
See you here
Well,
for that.
we love Fritz Park. It's a great area. We're very, very proud of what we offer and the quality of life that we have out there. Anything we can do to help with that litter would really help.
Well understood. Alder Eck.
You mentioned an agreement with other municipalities, it sounds like. What is the agreement?
I would defer to Supervisor Buckley on that one.
Okay.
He would have the details in it. He'd be more accurate on it than I would be.
Okay. Committee, anybody else?
That's
Questions?
Brown County takes care of the transfer station.
Yeah, Supervisor
and-
Buckley can talk about
Yeah, and that's why I called
Yeah.
Supervisor
Yeah,
Buckley,
they're-
because I knew it was a county issue. It wasn't a city issue.
Okay.
The
But,
other thing too, probably that's where vehicles start to pick up the speed and stuff like that.
well,
too,
that
you know.
speed on West Mason's another issue. We could have a whole other meeting on that one.
Yeah,
Well-
But that's not on the agenda tonight.
No,
so.
it's not. No, it's not.
I
Any
travel-
more
I
questions?
travel the Tower Bridge.
You can
and
go to
there's
Coquina
light
Speedway and
reserves
see 'em drive
you know,
slower there.
Ladders.
As long as they don't have logo numbers on the side, we don't want that.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else for Mr. Griswold? Otherwise, we'll entertain other folks to come forward.
Again,
I appreciate
yeah,
your.
our thanks and we appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for coming out.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Thank
Hello.
you.
Hello. You can state your name and address, although I think we know who you are.
Yeah, Patrick Buckley, 3249 West Point Road, Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Okay, you
54313.
heard Alder Eck's question, if you want to start with that, unless you want to just, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, I'll just, if I back up a little bit, after I get the call from Mr. Griswold, I did contact Dean Hain, who's Portland Solid
Waste.
Waste or Resource Department Head, and discussed the situation with him. And it is true, in fact, that in talking with him, that the county does have an agreement with the village of Hobart to monitor the trash. And actually, the company, I think it's called GFI now, does have an individual that goes out there on a regular basis. It's part of the contract with the county, because they handle the transfer station to pick up the garbage. And I did explain to him, because, you know, I see it as these other gentlemen do on a daily basis. You know, I'm driving that road 3 or 4 times a day, and you'll have a lot of trash, and it's not, just like you said, not the beer bottles. There's large pieces of plastic. There's mattresses out there. I mean, it gets to be a lot. And
Is there any in the roads at all, like something? that could
it'll be in the
hazard?
road sometimes, but then a lot of times it'll just get pushed off and put in the median and
Okay.
wait for, I think at some point in time, the city must pick up some of it at some point in time. I'm not sure who else was picking it up before,
Yeah, not sure.
but they would have to, in some cases, to mow.
Well,
You know, I know
it's,
some of the guys are out there, when they're mowing, they'll
it's a
pick up
state
some of it.
highway though, too, so, you know, maybe I'd like to hear your take on, you know, as far as responsibilities.
Well,
on some of that.
I did talk to Dean, as I said, and told him the concern, and that, you know, if we have an agreement with Hobart, you should really have an agreement with the city of Green Bay. But the city of Green Bay and the county never got together on that. But he did take my conversation, and unbeknownst to me, he did talk to GFI, and they ended up extending their, the gentleman that they have picking up from the Hobart line, or the city line, and I think they went all the way down to Country Club, didn't they?
That could have been the gentleman I
Yeah.
saw the other day. Could have been from GFI.
And I did talk to Dean and confirm that that's what they had done. They have no agreement with them. GFI just did it to be a good neighbor. They don't have to. I mean, it is time and you know, whatever for him to go out and do this. But one of the things, as I was talking to Dean, and maybe if you know Dean, right? If you talk to Dean, he had mentioned that GFI, because they're a new company in the area, is looking to maybe do something. I'm not sure if the city would have to do it or at the county level, more like an adopt a highway for that part out there. So maybe we could get this done in a more
Cooperative?
cooperative method, and if we could figure out between the city and the county how we could do some sort of adopt a highway out there. And maybe, who knows, if we put something in place, maybe we can use it elsewhere, or maybe with a different company. But, so they are willing to look at something like that.
Sure.
I know in talking with Dean, the cost to do the Hobart area was built into the contract when they contract with these, with this company. So,
Well, we'd have to look at that.
and at the time, there was never an issue with the city. So it is brought to their attention.
All right.
So
All the
pretty straightforward.
Okay. All the
Yeah, and I don't know if you're the one to ask this particular thing, but as I hear this, I think, isn't it dangerous? Like you mentioned, it could be a hazard, there's something flying off the truck. So I look at it as, so we can have somebody come and pick up after them, or is there something in place that could be, put over it, like a cover or something, to hold the items in? Because when you're driving behind them, you really don't want a mattress flying on your car,
I
So
believe
it seems like a
under the-
safety hazard.
For the commercial vehicles, they have to have covers on them. Similar like the city trucks, when they go out there, they have the big tarps that roll out. But private people that are taking stuff to the dump, and there's a lot of people, I don't know if you ever go out there on a Saturday, they're lined up down the highway to get into the place.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I don't think they have to follow the same rules unless they get to a commercial carrier.
I believe that there is a requirement, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe
Yep.
Anybody utilizing the transfer station, there's a requirement that the load be tarped,
Right.
properly secured. That
Now-
doesn't mean it's always adhered to.
Right.
Right.
Now, I am told that, by the time they make it into the transfer station, especially on a Saturday, where they could be sitting out there for about 10, 15 minutes outside the gate, they do try to monitor it the best they can, but they can't, if someone pulls the tarp up, or say they pulled the tarp up, while waiting out there, I think that'd be pretty hard to enforce that
That's a
part.
long drive once you get in there too. It takes a while, right? I mean,
Yep.
yeah, I've done
Yeah.
that once, and I was
Yeah.
like, wow, where am I?
Yep. So,
that's another story.
yeah, you're not, just driving by, you don't realize what's back there.
Sure.
Um,
Well, I was gonna say, anybody else on committee? I'm just wondering, it sounds like Alder Burnett was talking about, somehow bringing it back to a committee, or not committee, but the staff on that. So I don't know, Alder Worry, do you have any points on here?
Not any questions right now.
The only thing I would, if you're able to talk to Dean, maybe put something together with GFI, a meeting with GFI to see if we could do some sort of joint city-county adopt a highway or something.
Is that, okay, you're not.
Keep it somewhat reasonable.
All right.
Do you as well as Alder Burnett want to stay involved in the discussions, or do you just want periodic updates? Or
Periodic updates is fine, unless if you're having an issue, getting any cooperation from the county, I'd be happy to jump in and be a part of
I
it.
don't see that as being a problem.
No. So,
Well, good.
any other questions? Sorry.
No,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
All right.
All right. Anybody else to speak to this? All right, motion to close the floor, somebody?
Motion to close the floor?
Motion by Eck. Second by Campbell. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All- That passes unanimously. Okay, and I talked to Alder Burnett briefly about this before too, and Alder Worry, you had something?
Nope.
No? Okay. Alder Burnett, do you want to come
Yeah,
up and?
thank you. And again, thank you for my
Yes,
constituents here for expressing themselves. It is a concern.
Appreciate that.
I think there is a spirit of cooperation. It is an environmental thing. If you would refer it back to staff, I think, Director Grenier, unless you wanted to speak on it now, I'm feel content based on what we've heard.
Well, I do have a couple of brief things to bring to the committee's attention. Prior to coming to the city, I was a consulting engineer. I was actually the designer of the transfer station.
You made all those roads like that?
Well, that was from when the West Landfill was in operation, but I was actually the designer of that transfer station.
Okay.
So I have a lot of experience working with Brown County. The reason that they have an agreement with the Village of Hobart but nobody else is because the transfer station is located within the Village of Hobart. Solid waste legislation, Chapter 287 Wisconsin statutes, provides that when you're locating a solid waste facility in a municipality, you are required to negotiate a host community agreement with that community. So there's a statutory requirement for them to negotiate with Hobart for hosting the transfer station and not with Green Bay. That's why Hobart's the only community they have an agreement with. They're obligated to do that. I love the idea of potentially working with the transfer station vendor in sort of an adopt a highway. That's definitely something we'll look at. We'd want to sit down and have conversations with Brown County Port and Resource Recovery to ensure that they are properly enforcing their tarping requirements. But it's helpful to hear from Mr. Griswold and Supervisor Buckley that it appears it's more so the private haulers, the small folks who are bringing trailer loads or pickup loads full of stuff that things are getting out of, not the commercial haulers. And those are a lot harder to enforce because they're 1 and 2 trip generators. But yeah, we definitely would take this and sit down and have conversations with our counterparts at the county, with the elected officials, with the neighborhood associations necessary, and see if there's something we can do in the long term.
Well, I would entertain a motion then to that effect.
I'd
Or
say,
no,
if I
just-
I don't want to speak for Mr. Griswold, but I would imagine the effort that they have put through the years, the residents and neighborhood associations, volunteers, that the neighborhood association would probably gladly write a letter or some communication in a spirit of cooperation.
Right.
Like, they can probably still continue, but I wouldn't want their volunteers to go out in that hazardous stretch of road. So I do think that there's a lot of potential here. So for staff, I think would be great.
Okay.
So what's the motion?
That actually would be my motion, to refer to staff to work with Brown County and GFI on a short-term and long-term solution and report back. I don't know what time.
Quarterly
time frame
maybe?
it-
What did you say,
Or it
quarterly?
might even be just a one-time thing, right?
One time? I mean, as far as time frame, Steve, anything?
Next week, okay? Is that enough time?
Well, let's see, it's early May now. I think we could probably be bringing something back July.
I don't think we meet in July, though, so it's
No,
either
we
late
don't.
June or early August.
Yeah, it'll probably be the
Early August. So at one of our meetings in early August, maybe report back to us
Sure.
as far as what's going on with that.
Now, that's just a report back. You might next week come to some great solution with them and have it solved before then. I don't want to make it sound like we're not doing anything,
I would
right?
love for that to
So-
happen.
Well, and that's fine, and if you can let us know, let us know
Yeah.
at council too as well, that would be helpful.
And then just one other thing for you, Alder Story, you had asked, you had talked to Supervisor Buckley about the fact that that's State Trunk Highway 54. Being a city as opposed to a village, we have a unique situation here in Green Bay where most of the highways, as they enter the corporate city limits, state trunk highways cease being a true state trunk and it becomes what's referred to as a connecting highway. So with the connecting highways, the right-of-way is owned by the city, the maintenance is performed by the city, and we get connecting highway aids. That's one of the revenue sources that you'll see in the budget book in the fall. So that maintenance responsibility goes off the county and goes to the city on connecting highways. So the state and the county really don't have much interplay on that.
Does that wash out as far as expenses and that pretty well? I mean, this.
Not really, but-
Okay.
If you take what you can get, what else to say?
Okay. All right, the motion was made. Did we have a second?
Oh, I second.
Second by Eck. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
We'll let Steve work his magic.
Yeah.
The next
just-
one kind of goes with what you were, doesn't the next one kind of go with that? Staffing the yard waste site?
Yeah, I suppose. Well, in a way, we'll see. Okay, number 2,
Yard waste is.
consideration
Oh,
with possible
yeah.
action on request to review staffing the yard waste sites to ensure there is no contractor use of the facilities. I brought that up at city council. Just in a nutshell, I'll just say something before, we open it up. I go there quite often. That's over, off of Military, it's Hurlbut Street. So I go in there quite a bit, dropping off leaves and branches and stuff like that, and I know a bunch of us have done that. And There have been a few times where there has been a young person there, you know, maybe an intern or something, sitting there. Hey, do you have a license? You know, you have to be a city resident to use it. I go in there, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 times a month, maybe more, depending. And there are times where I've seen big trucks, you know, contractor kind of trucks there, and they might have a name on the side, but I'm not sure where they're from. You know, are they from the city of Green Bay or they're from outside? So, you know, I think I'm just looking at it from a fairness standpoint where city taxpayers are paying for that facility. And if people from outside the city are utilizing it, you know, we're losing out somewhat either in fees or such, you know, and they're also taking material too. You know, there's mulch piles and dirt piles, and they're taking that, and that's really city. Hate to be selfish about it, but it's a city. Yeah, we paid for it, and you know, if there's something that could be worked out, that's fine. But that's my initial complaint on that, and I'd entertain the committee to visit on that. But you know, Steve, I've talked to you about this a couple times, and just trying to get a handle on it. I realize it's tough to hire somebody to sit there all the time and do that. You know, we have staffing issues at times with, you know, just trying to fill in normal positions at the cities. So just looking for a discussion on this, pretty much. So I'll direct, and then I'll get Alder Campbell.
What types of things are they leaving?
Well, I mean they've got big. I don't know.
Yeah,
Have
but
you been
it's
there?
yard.
Have you been to that?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, there's piles where you dump out grass clippings, leaves. You know, they usually have separate piles. There's sticks, bushes. There's branches, things like that. They're kind of separated out where you can drop things off, and then they have large piles to the side of mulched material and things that you can bring your car or truck or whatever and load it up, and then you can take it back to your house and use it for gardening or whatever you want to use it for.
I'm sorry, I guess I'm continuing my question. So when they leave something, is there something the city needs to do with that? Because I know I go out there and I get wood chips, or if there's plants people leave
Right,
behind
but-
and things like that.
Well, the question, it's not so much, I mean, we pick things up, we drop things off. It's just that, are you a city resident?
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm bringing forward.
Okay.
Alder Campbell?
I talked to someone here this last weekend on the issue too, that was on the agenda here. And, you know, I live right by it, very close. I visit it quite often.
That's over by the wildlife
Yeah, I
sanctuary?
can almost see the fence from
Yeah,
the whole
right.
area there, you know?
Okay.
And, you know, I always wondered why contractors can drop off stuff, you know, lawn care guys. I mean, everyone, his brother has a lawn care business, you know. I talked to a guy that was cutting the lawn today that was from Algoma coming to Green Bay. I'm like, now there's a perfect thing there. I think we gotta remember that if they're cutting city grass, even if they're getting paid as a business and a service to do it, that's still taxpayers' clippings. In a way.
Well, right,
But
there's-
from outside the city, no. But how do you regulate it, you know?
I know,
There used to be a guy in the old shack there, you know what I mean, and over by me, and he used to sit there all the time, you know, and tell me about all the deer and everything, you know what I mean? I mean, a lot of people go in there just to see the deer and the
Yeah, there's
turkeys,
a lot of
you know
deer
what I
by that
mean?
one.
Yeah, not so many anymore, but, you know, I wonder too, and this is a question, that everyone drops off a ton of wood there. And there's people with chainsaws and everything in there. I mean, what kind of a liability is that for the city when people are just coming in there? I mean, some of these people don't have a saw. I mean, I see them wailing away with an axe, and I'm like, God, I'm gonna go home and get my chainsaw and go help the guy, you know?
no, that's a good point. I mean,
But what about the safety issue of that, you know what I mean?
Well,
Is there one or what?
There's not. The user assumes the risk.
I mean, it's nice for totally recycling everything, and then there's a
Right.
lot of work that goes in. I know both the gentlemen I went to school with on the east side, you know what I mean? And I always kindly bring them a Mountain Dew, big one, you know, because they're hot, you know, they have air conditioning in those loaders, you know, but, you know, it's a pretty well kept up. I don't know about the west side, I go to the east side, but, you know,
Right.
there's a lot of people there. I mean, a lot of stuff.
like I said, that's not the issue or problem. I'm just
Yeah.
looking at, you know, and if it sounds like I'm being selfish, I'm just looking at fairness, that's all. So
Well-
what do you think there, Steve?
Currently, we do not allow non-residents, nor do we allow commercial. to utilize those sites. So whether they're mowing Green Bay grass or not is irrelevant. If you're a commercial entity, you're not allowed to use that facility.
That's what I.
The reason for that is the facilities are limited. We can have no more than 20,000 cubic yards of material on that site at any one time. If we open up.
How big is that? 20,000 cubic? Just give me a figure, like a couple of big hills.
The east side's huge.
Anyway,
Right, well,
It's
if you
just-
take a look at the compost piles,
yeah,
the ones that are actively being turned,
sure.
we are floating right at that 20,000 yard limit
With one or two of those.
at each site.
Oh,
We got
each site.
40,000 total.
It's total. You're looking at total?
Right, each site is limited to 20,000
I see.
yards.
Okay. All right.
The reason for that, there are small composting sites and then there are large composting sites. 20,000 is the break. Once you break that 20,000 cubic yards of material being processed, now you start getting into tighter environmental regulations. There has to be a clay liner, there has to be a leachate collection system, there has to be environmental monitoring. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes on there. So if we can stay below the 20,000 yards, it's less expensive and less regulation you have to meet. Those are DNR regulations. Now, Alder Weary's the only one who's been on committee and council long enough. We have been working collaboratively with the city of De Pere and the village of Ledgeview because they are losing their yard waste site. So we initiated a study that's ongoing right now with a consultant on what it would take to operate a larger than 20,000 cubic yard site. And that way we can bring Ledgeview and De Pere into our sites. The additional cost would then be borne by 3 municipalities. We can help spread that cost out as well. If we're able to actually site larger than 20,000 yard sites and bring those other municipalities in, then we will probably also allow contractors to come in, because that's one of the problems, that's one of the complaints we get from contractors is, I'm cutting Green Bay grass and I've got nowhere to go with it. Well, you're also charging them, you're charging for a service, that's part of your business, you need to figure out where you're gonna go, because you can't come to a municipally operated site.
I agree.
But do
So,
they still do it? I mean,
Absolutely.
we're hearing about it, yeah, so what we've got, I've actually started staff on the task of taking a look at this and generating a report. We hope to have it for the next meeting. And what we're
Okay.
looking at is a variety of scenarios, one of which is a full-time attendant operation. Another scenario would involve random inspections where you never know when somebody's gonna
Yeah.
drop in unannounced to do to check for ID and not have contractors in there.
What about
Okay.
surveillance?
The problem with surveillance is, if somebody's not there, they are susceptible to damage, vandalism. The other problem, the second problem that we see with the surveillance cameras, unless they're hooked to fiber optic, the quality and the reliability is questionable. Cellular-based cameras really don't work that well, especially for that type of application. Third problem is the clarity that we get. We've all heard the stories about, National Security Administration can read a license plate from space, but the commercially available cameras that we have access to, they're not that good. So they're really not as good as you might think
Just
for that type
just
of
an idea.
application.
okay, hold on. No, are you done, Alder? Refer to me so I can.
Other than,
otherwise it's
I'm pretty sure
confusing.
there is a sign posted there that no commercial people.
Yes, the signs at the entrance to both facilities indicate no commercial vehicles and be prepared to show ID.
Okay, Alder, aye.
Yeah, I was just wondering what the options are for commercial.
Right now, there's not a whole lot of good ones. There was a point in time when Danon and Jansen had an operation on Scrays Hill that they were doing some property reclamation from an old pit. So they were taking a lot of that material and using it to fill a hole, but that was done. That's completed now. So right now, there are a lot of commercial contractors who are looking for that. Some folks have relationships with farmers, and the farmers will till it into fields or things like that, but those options are really only available at certain times of the year.
So it sounds like if we took that away, that option for commercial people to do that, there'd be a stretch for them to do something.
Well,
find a spot.
that option technically doesn't exist for commercial right now. The ones who are utilizing our sites are sneaking in there
Yeah.
and they're breaking the ordinance. If we were somehow successful in the ability to increase the capacity of our sites and provide a disposal option for them, we've had contractors tell us that, charge me $500 a year and I'm perfectly happy to pay that, so I got a reason. So I think there is an opportunity to recover some revenue out there. The problem is we can't increase the capacity of the site beyond the 20,000 yards without running into the regulatory hurdles. So if we can resolve that, if we can get enough input that it makes it cost effective for us to go with that greater than 20,000 cubic yard site, then by opening the door up to commercial entities and then charging those commercial entities for cost recovery, then I think we have an option.
Okay. I got a question, or Alderman, go ahead.
Okay. Sounds like you're already working on it, so
Right.
are we gonna need a third site? Because both of our sites are kind of far away from Superior.
I don't know that we're going to necessarily need another site. There's a fair amount of underutilized
Okay.
at the east side facility already. I think we could expand our operations on our existing footprint. The west side facility, I think we're space constrained there, but
Aren't we moving to the corner lot? Or is
we
that
are,
still-
and that's a
still
smaller
in the
lot.
works? Okay.
Which one is that again?
The west side.
The west side, okay.
The west side, we actually have to move, we're on county land right now, and we have to move to the corner.
Oh,
So we're moving off of a large site onto a much smaller site.
mhm.
But one of the things that I have been discussing is potentially working with the Oneida Nation to acquire the former OSG property. And then take some of our operations and move down to that location. So clean wood processing, no composting, just the clean wood. So the things that Alder Campbell was talking about with the folks coming in and taking the wood that's dropped off there. The wood chipping to create clean wood chip. A lot of those processes could move onto that other property on Hurlbut, separate, because we're not composting that material anyway. Why clog up the site and count that against our 20,000 yards or whatever our capacity number is,
Sounds like a good
if we could move it to a different location and keep it clean?
So you're in the middle of negotiations on that?
We've just started
Just
some
started?
preliminary discussions.
A couple more things, but.
Okay, go ahead.
So there could ultimately be on that site a waste to future energy
Oh, no, no.
solution, okay.
Oh,
For those who went through all that, okay. Do we really know right now how much is being used by non-residents? I mean, we don't have a good idea, right? If it's 5% of what we
We do
take in,
believe
or-
that the high percentage
Okay.
is city residents. It
hard
is a
to-
rarity.
well, right, it's,
'Cause I was wondering, can we handle the volume being left right now at both sites? Are we able to function okay with that, and we're not being overtaxed by what's being left?
Yes, we are holding our own with the existing sites. It's, the idea of expanding those sites would be to provide an option for contractors and to work collaboratively with Superior and Ledgeview.
Yep, and I do understand that part, and I agree with it. I
Yeah.
was just talking about what might be coming in from other municipalities, because, is the solution obtainable, right? And what's it cost and
what
what's the
about
effort?
fees?
Yeah.
Having fees.
But then you go back to, do
No.
you need, I remember back in the late 90s when I first bought my house, there was an older fella who was in his little hut, and he'd hobble out and check your ID and wave you in, right? And then at some point he went away and the hut went away. But I don't know what that would cost to maintain that, because a lot of people go right up to dusk. I know, I sneak in there right at dusk all the time, because I'm behind.
Right.
So we have to be careful that our solution isn't really.
Yeah, I mean, are we spending too much time trying to figure out?
So
a
it'd
solution?
be interesting to see if there really is a big problem or not, right? I don't know how we.
I mean, did we ever consider like a sticker or something, for city, I don't know, is that too much? Thinking of if you're a city employee or a city citizen, you could have a small sticker saying, you just come in and,
But someone would still.
Someone
have to
still have to be there.
be there.
But I'm
but
not saying
I'm
you're
just,
you're off the mark, yeah.
I'm just talking about
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
So,
I'd be interested to.
well, it's just an idea, I
Sure.
had, to have some, and I think this is something that has to be studied a little bit, so I would suggest, I don't know how your staff is situated for this. I mean, it's not a real pressing issue, but, the warm weather is here, so you could have a lot of this going on. So it would be nice to kind of at least in my mind's eye, to get a little handle on this.
Mhm.
So is that committee, how do you feel about it? Will you maybe report back?
Well, based on what Director Grenier said, working with the other municipalities, I think that kind of, reporting back to us with how that's going.
I think that would be one part of the report. You kind of know what we're looking for.
I do.
So I would say, we have a motion to direct staff to move along with what was suggested today. So I don't know, and you're good at working things.
Well, I would think an appropriate motion would just be to refer to staff for study with what you have already in the motion. I think that's fine. That gives us enough direction to move forward.
Okay, motion to refer to staff for study
Okay, by
and report.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that, and then,
Second, okay.
and then if you could, Steve, you could wrap then all those issues and items together when you
Sure.
come back. You could talk about pursuing an agreement with, other municipalities, talk about,
Could this be an early August thing again? Would that be
I
possible?
would think so, yeah.
You can report back to us.
yeah.
Okay,
Perfect.
all right. Any
Right
other
now.
discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? That passes unanimously. Moving along. Number 3, consideration with possible action on a request to investigate the cause of damage to a private storm lateral serving 727 Gray Street. I brought that forward. I have some citizens from District 10 that are here. Met with them numerous times. Mr. Matt Heckenleibel came out from the city and also met, with these folks as well. So, yep, we have Carol Ray is here. Actually, when you come up to testify, I would, let's hold on a second. Alder
He's
Campbell.
looking for his paperwork.
Oh, I see.
Okay, there we go.
Because we're going to need to open the floor on this, so I'd like to have a motion to open the floor.
Make a motion to open the floor.
Okay, by
Second.
Campbell, seconded by Eck. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the floor is now open, so I would ask you to come up, state your name and address, and then we'll discuss things.
Carol Ray, R-A-Y, 727 Gray Street, Green Bay, 54303.
Welcome, Carol.
Thank you.
And you did just mention what you did provide us. We have a
Yes.
chronology here that she dropped off
Right, I have a
for each one of
chronology
us.
of the issue that we're talking about. It's a yard drain that was put in my backyard in 1998.
I'm impressed you still have the.
Okay, record keeping.
They call it good bookkeeping.
Okay.
Yeah, record keeping. I go to my files and there it was.
Okay, well, great.
So it's the chronology of this process. And basically, the reason we put the drain in to begin with was we had years of backyard flooding in the entire block. And it would be very, very bad sometimes. We literally had ducks who would come and be there for several days or weeks. And it just got to be a real issue with the smell and, kids playing and things like that. So we talked about it, and then at one point in 1998, I was building a new garage. And because my garage was occasionally underwater, I thought, I'm not going to build it at that same level. So I was thinking about my neighbors, and I thought, well, I don't want to raise mine up and then displace more water for their yards. So I decided to have a meeting with the neighbors, and I called them together, and we decided to go ahead with putting a drain in there. And I had it surveyed by the city about 9 years before that. And they said this is the lowest spot in the block. That's why it's placed where it is. And the neighbors went together with me. We paid for it together. We considered our neighborhood drain because it takes care of many of the issues right in our block. And so it worked from 1998 until last spring of 2021. And at that time, Joan's husband came over one day with his high boots on, and it was like maybe April or March or April, and he said, Carol, we have a problem. It doesn't seem that the drain is working properly. And it wasn't. But we didn't know exactly what the issue was at that time. It could have been frozen or whatever. So we waited a little, plus I was going through an estate trust that I'm in charge of. And so I was so overwhelmed with stuff I had to do that I just didn't deal with it immediately. So in August, we had, I called Coral Sewer Service, and they came out. And they televised it, they put a camera down there.
This was August of 2020?
2021.
2021.
Yep, just a few months ago. And then he could see that there were rocks and things, and then he probed a little, pushed something all the way from the backyard all the ways. And he didn't know for sure what the blockage was, but the water became murky, and he couldn't see exactly what was in there. So he said he'd come back, so 3 days later or 4 days later, I had him back again, and then he could see more. The water had settled, the murkiness had dissipated a bit, and but then he said, I can't really do a whole lot right now. I don't know, it's not pushing through there. So I waited till November because I was just so busy. So then I did have him come back again, and each time I'd have him come, Dave, one of my neighbors, would be out there, and Joan's husband would be out there with me, and Paul Pavlik came a couple of times. So I had other people there who knew a little more about it. And so he's at that, in the one in November, he said, no, you're going to need some other help with this. I can't bore through there. That time he actually did a boring thing through it, I think with blades on something, to go through the pipe and try to move the blockage. Well, then in November, like a week or two later, Paul Pavlik used to work for the water department, and he had contacts, and he called someone who has a company that will do the excavating and so on. And he came out with his partner, and they had, you'll see pictures of the two guys in the holes that they dug. One, it's right next to my driveway. That's where the line goes from the backyard out to the street. And there is a hole there. They dug two holes because they went on my property side of the sidewalk first, and they found they didn't find the exact what was going on. They cut that. One of those pictures shows you that where they cut the hole on the property side, and they cut a piece of pipe out in that area. But then they had to go farther than that to really find the clog and the issue that had caused it. And what it is at some point there's a hole in our pipe. Here's give me my rock here. This is Travis has been saving this dirty pipe. This is my pipe, and it's two pieces. This would match up with this.
You can't do this on Zoom.
Right. So we have that's the hole that was in the top of the pipe. Now what caused it is some company we didn't know when or who. That's because it worked all those years. We had no reason to think there was a problem.
So they found it when they dug down.
Right. He found it. Here's pictures of an orange pipe that goes over my green pipe.
Well,
And the orange pipe, they say it looks like it's either a fiber optic or a phone cable or something like that. And they said that, I don't know this, but they said the color tells what type of pipe it is. And when they bored that through the ground, I don't remember that ever happening. Now, it could have happened a long time ago, it could have happened just a few years ago, but it created this hole, but our drain still worked until we had the major reconstruction of Gray Street in like April through October of 2020, where they dug everything out, put in all new everything, all new concrete, all new everything, and they kept bringing in loads of gravel, putting it in, digging it out when the next contractor would come to do the next phase. And so I think, and it was the earth really shook. They would pound that gravel in and pound everything in with this big flat thing on the end of a boom, and it would just, the house would just shake. So something shifted everything in there, and the pipe was blocked with gravel and dirt and debris, and it was packed solid. The guys cleaned it then, once they found out what it was, they located the blockage, and
So the holes that were dug, was that done before or after the street was being done?
oh, this is just last November.
That was just last
This
November.
was just last November
So the street
when
was
the-
already...
Oh, it was all done.
Okay, right.
Street was all done. We didn't know that the drain wasn't working until spring came, and maybe it even was settling in the winter and all, or moving. Maybe that even added it, but lots of gravel was in there, and that would indicate it came from the street project.
Okay.
So-
Alderette, do you have a question?
Yeah, so, understanding when the damage was done, I see the orange thing, but since it goes across, when all this other construction was going on, is that when you think the damage was done with all the banging and it hit it and broke it?
It was a combination of things. I think the original damage that didn't cause our drain to be ineffective was in, whenever somebody pushed that orange pipe, they must have done it all underground. I never saw anything where they came and actually worked, dug trenches or put in holes in all our properties or anything. And I've been in touch with the city. Mark has done some contacting of people. Paul Pavlik has called many people. We tried to figure out what company might have done this. But, if they don't have a record, the city can't find, well, the guy that was doing it for me, I don't remember his name right now, you might remember.
Was that Matt when he came out?
Yes,
Matt
yes.
Heckenleibel. He's-
Matt, and he said he went back 5 years, but the system is, every page is just a spreadsheet, and he has to go line by line by line by line, and he did that for the last 5 years. And he couldn't find a permit for anybody
to do
in that area. So it could have been damaged before that, but then you add on, final straw, I think, was having that construction where everything was unearthed and moved, and, we didn't know that was going on. We didn't know the hole was there.
I think that's one of the issues. Are you done, Alderette? Right now? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I guess you
now.
answered what I was gonna
Yeah.
ask.
Well, we'll be talking a bit, but I think we had talked about this, and I've met with you folks a number of times, but, the city, they came out and looked at some things too, and it sounds to me like that there are times where these contractors will come out, and there's not always a record of the folks, and there's, right now, we've got fiber optic, we've got gas, we've got electric, we've got, we've just got a number of utilities that come in and do things, so it's really tough, and I appreciate some of the issues that Public Works has to go through. What do we got to stop here, Attorney?
No, I have a question for you that I need you to ask her, because I can't ask her directly.
Oh, I see. Okay, do you want, should we close the floor first?
No, I need
It's a
an
question
answer,
for-
so you can leave the floor open. I'm just wondering if
Okay.
this matter has gone through our claims process at all.
I don't believe so. Okay. Carol, has this gone through, I have to ask you, has this gone through a claims process yet?
No,
It
I have been
hasn't.
in touch with the mayor's assistant,
Melissa?
Melissa.
yeah.
Yep. I've been in touch with her. We've talked on the phone a few times, and she was looking into some of this for me also.
Okay.
So we've had several people figuring out what to do and making contacts with others.
Attorney Mather, would you say that?
That's all I need to know.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
okay.
Okay.
I just got one question. From one picture to the other, it looks like the red pipe was taken out or whatever. I would assume that this is running perpendicular under your driveway, the red pipe direction,
Yep.
and the
It's
green
going,
runs to the
it's going
street.
parallel to the street.
The red.
What was in it?
Parallel.
I mean,
Is it further, the red pipe isn't here, is it further? There's a picture of the
okay.
hole, but there's no red pipe.
Okay, right
I see what I thought that was.
here, how about this colored one?
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I'm
but
looking
we
at.
don't see it in this picture.
I mean, you would have to know what's in that pipe.
Oh, that's a different hole.
Oh,
There were two
okay.
holes.
That's right. 2 holes.
That black and white photo is just, that's the hole they dug on my property side of the front sidewalk, and that's not where the problem ended up to be. They had to go between the sidewalk and the street.
And this
You're
was the
missing a
water
photo.
department?
What?
You're missing a photo.
Looks like a full street.
I probably am.
No, this is really well put together.
Yeah, this is the one he was asking about. This was the first hole that was close to the, on my property line.
Was that were those the folks from the water department that came out for that? Or was that somebody else? The ones that
No.
dug it?
The ones that cleaned it,
When Paul
it's,
Pavlik got a hold of someone to come in.
it's right here.
Yeah, is it northeast sewer or something?
It's the Northeast
North-
Sewer and Water LLC.
I see.
Yep.
Then I knew that, but I just needed to hear it from you.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Thanks. All right.
You always hear the digger's hotline. They have to come out and
Exactly.
mark things, wouldn't they know?
That's what I
I
thought.
don't think that was ever done.
Okay.
It must not have been, because
Well,
why would they
What
have
was in
missed
the red
it?
pipe is my question.
Well,
Anything?
it
thought it
sounds
was
like
fiber
optics,
optic.
fiber optics.
Well, in a situation like that,
Yep.
when you call Digger's Hotline, let's say for discussion purposes, this is a fiber optic line. When the company installing the fiber optic line calls Diggers, Diggers would have existing facilities located. If this private drain is not registered, if they've not registered as a utility with Digger's Hotline, then there's no record of their pipe, there's nothing to mark. One of the problems that Mr. Pavlik indicated to me was before they started digging a hole, they contacted Digger's Hotline and had diggers come out and locate all the utilities that are in the street. Then theoretically, that fiber should be marked. And when you dig the hole up and see, okay, the fiber's in conflict with the lateral, you know who that is. They called for a planning locate prior to digging. No company located that fiber optic. They called for the actual locates prior to excavating, and according to Mr. Pavlik, no fiber optic company claimed that. So through two diggers' requests, nobody located or marked the location of that fiber optic.
So what came first? The chicken or
Chicken
the
or
egg?
the
No,
egg.
no. I couldn't resist. No, but which pipe was there
The
first?
green pipe was definitely there first. This is
Okay.
what we refer to as a crossbore. Because the pipe runs perpendicular to the road from the house out to the sewer, then more often than not, these utilities, when they're installed, they'll start at the end of the block near the curb ramps, and they directionally drill in, then that drill turns horizontal, and it runs the length of the block, and then they pop back out at the curb, or at the end of the block, then they go under the street, and then they do the same thing, okay? So that's how they run the bore head in, and when the bore head pops up at the far end of the block, they take the drill head off. It's referred to as a Chinese finger. Remember the old finger torture device when you were a child? It's the same thing. It's a woven steel that fits around the end of the drill rod, and then the other side you stick the conduit in. And when you pull tension on it, it pulls tight, and as you pull the rod back, you actually drag the conduit through that same hole. That's how the hole stays open. There's either a rod holding the soil back or the pipe holding the soil back. What happened in this case, based off of the pictures and the pipe sheaths, it didn't completely bore through their lateral pipe, but rather hit the top and skipped off and chipped the top of the pipe out. Now, in that case, I can see, because either the drill rod was there or the conduit was in that place, there wasn't anything that was moving the soil around, so this could have been like this for many years
Yes.
without that soil falling in.
Right, so
Because we went out and reconstructed the road, and you start, the machine she's talking about, we refer to in the business as a hoe pack. It's a backhoe, and you take the bucket off of the backhoe, and there's a vibratory compactor plate that runs off the hydraulics that you go on there, and that's how you compact the gravel around the pipes, okay? And you don't want the pipes to settle or move around, you don't want your road to settle, so you gotta put good compaction on it. And when you start banging on that soil to compact the gravel, that's what's causing the vibrations in the terrace. And that vibration, that gravel that had been bridging that hole all along, when it started shaking, the gravel fell in.
So did the two pipes rub against each other then on that? Or, you know, I mean, like, I'm just.
Nothing that would cause a problem
Okay.
like the hole. The hole was caused by the drilling activity to originally
Okay.
install the
We're-
conduit.
Well, we're still,
Yeah.
the floor is
Yeah.
still open,
Yep.
so
What are we
we're
getting to?
kind of going a little too. But,
I
so
guess-
other
So
questions?
it worked for a long time,
Yes, it did.
because finally then enough soot fell in here and possibly the chunk of the pipe, and that's what blocked it. So
So
we're past,
we're just looking at, you know,
So
where's the
either-
responsibility here? You know,
Yeah.
and that,
then they gotta look 5 years, more than 5 years back is
and the
the
city
clue
did a
that I
nice
see.
job. I mean, Matt did a nice
Yeah,
job
I
of
don't
going
know.
back in time and trying to find things out.
We think about fiber optics and when they would've went in, I think it's more than 5 years ago, probably more like 10.
There's a lot of people. Well, anyway, do we have any more questions for Carol right now? You've really presented
No.
a good.
And
So
Paul
do you have any
had-
other points that you want to make, Carol?
Just that, I was gonna add, when you just said that, Paul Pavlik called, he tried to get to any potential fiber optic company it could be. And I guess some of them aren't in business anymore. The one that he mentioned that they said if they did the damage, they'd pay for it, but they didn't have a record either. And that was Windstar or something like
Yeah,
that,
that's it.
Windstream?
Windstream.
Windstream? Was it? Windstream.
And what's that company?
It's, they,
Fiber optic company?
I don't know. I don't know. I wish Paul were here, but,
Yeah, yeah.
but do you know what kind
Well-
of company
Well, I
it
think
was?
they
Well-
call
It
it fiber
doesn't-
optic.
We'll have to open the floor for you,
Oh, okay.
Mr. Carnup. You know, we're just talking to Carol now, but if
Yeah,
if
that's
anybody
fine.
else wants to say something, they can.
No, no, that's fine.
So Carol, any,
I don't
Do you-
think there's anything else.
I mean, we may still have some other questions of you,
Okay.
but I appreciate you bringing all this
Okay.
material.
Well, thank you very much for hearing me out on this.
And we'll discuss things.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody else that would
No,
like to speak?
that's it. Thank you for your homework.
Okay, anybody
Oh,
else?
my
Okay.
pipes.
All right, yeah, get your show and tell stuff.
Yeah, I'll
Close the floor
take
here.
this.
All right,
I'll
motion to
take
close the
this.
floor by word and
Yep.
second by act. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, you know, I'll just say one thing. I know there's been some situations, and I know all that were, you probably experienced it too, when you have, you know, 3 or 4 different companies working on a limited space, and there's pipes and wires and conduits, that sometimes things happen, and sometimes the permits aren't always there in place, or a time frame, and then it's very hard to kind of draw back, and it's kind of perplexing to me a little bit, so I don't know, do you have anything to add on something like that, or your thoughts?
I
You
mean, if there was any thought at all that the city might be somehow liable, it would be through the claims committee. I don't know, you know, looking at this, other than just doing the street work that finally caused the original damage to cave in more. I'm not sure, you know,
Yeah,
what
I-
more we can do.
Hold on, right?
Attorney.
Just,
Oh,
Yep, go
just
ahead.
a comment and a question. If, it sounds like there was some, you know, there were some, I have to do my lawyer thing, right? So there were some statements that part of it at least was, in like Steve explained, may have been because of the soil being moved while the construction was being done. So in case there are any allegations of this being related at all, or the city being liable at all, please refrain from any discussions of potential liability until it's gone through the claims process, if that becomes necessary.
Okay.
My question then is, what exactly is being sought here? As far as
reimbursement.
a remedy
Is it listed
or-
in here, otherwise we'll have to open the
It
floor
just
again?
says an
It's on here.
investigation, and so I'm just wondering what
Got
that.
it on.
Well, I know there was a
Can I-
cost.
Can I show her this or not?
A motion open the
Sure.
floor again? I'll make the motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Second by Campbell, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Oh, I thought
All right,
it was
Carol, that's
reimbursement.
Attorney Mather, so if you want
Nice
to,
to meet you.
and then discuss with us too.
And while the floor is open,
Yes.
Mrs. Ray, would
Yes.
you have another copy of that chronology, or is there some way we
You know
could
what?
get a?
We- There's a whole.
Okay, sure. As long,
I'll share-
if I could
Yes.
borrow Alder Sawyer's
Yes.
after the meeting.
You can keep it, I'll,
And I can make.
or make
Well, what
I'll
we're
share.
going to do, because you presented this at the meeting in open session, I'm going to have this scanned in. This will become part of the council report, so all the council members have it. But this will definitely help us as
Okay,
well.
very
We
good.
Thank
do
you.
have it as
Thank you.
attachment.
Thanks for putting that in there, Steve.
yeah, appreciate that. Attorney Mather, you have what you need?
Yes,
Or-
thank you.
Okay, we have, so, well, the worry brings up a good point, because, being a city, being the city, we're looking at, is there any issue with this? And we don't, unless it goes through claims, we almost have to defer to that, I would think. We can only speculate here, and we're not, I don't think we're directed to do that.
Well, especially because it was indicated the fiber optics company did it, which is not city.
Attorney Mather, can I ask you if maybe that's just conjecture on your part, but if this goes towards claims committee, is there, you're looking at just from the city standpoint, but you might make referral to the fact that there were other companies that were involved in this, and that could have been, I don't know, I'm trying to, I don't know
Sure,
if I'm answering.
I don't want to speak about this situation in
Right.
particular, but I can tell you generally, part of the investigation into any claim is to look at all potential sources of liability, and so that would be something that we would be looking for.
Okay,
Is, apportioning, if there is any apportionment of responsibility to be done, how that would be done based on who's what percentage at fault and all that good stuff.
so as far as claims, there's a process by which you do that?
Yes, I can get some
Get-
info if that's,
Yes.
we have a form somewhere, I just don't know where it is at the moment.
All right, well,
Oh, yeah.
I'll
I
try
would-
to run and grab one.
Oh,
work with them on that.
I knew I saw it somewhere. It says on here, we can, the damage and feel
the
it should be
floor.
reimbursed.
We have the floor still open, so.
Motion to close the floor?
Motion, anybody else?
Okay.
Motion to
Second.
close the floor, second by Etner, by Weary, seconded by Campbell. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Alder Eck?
Oh, I just, and
Yep.
Alder Campbell pointed out that there was a place I saw it, I knew I read it, that it was asking for reimbursement of the $2,044.75 that they spent.
Okay. All right. What's that?
Goes
They
on
were
to say-
asking what they were asking,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
what it
perfect.
says
It was on the
here.
very last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
I read
how
it
much
somewhere.
research
I
you
mean,
did,
it-
and how much work you did in the packet you put
We might
together.
have to hire you.
Oh, are you free on Wednesday nights?
Yeah, what if, yeah, did anybody else, does anybody else want to say anything?
But I don't know if I can just ask it
Well,
without being
we'd have to open,
recognized.
we'd have to open the floor
Motion to open the
again.
floor?
Do you want, motion to open the floor,
Sure.
I'll make the motion,
Yep.
seconded by Weary, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Just state your name and address for the record, and,
Joan Swigert, 800 Ethel Avenue,
hey, Joey.
Green Bay. And my question is something that I'm sitting here thinking about. How do you know as much as this fellow here knows? But I guess I want to know.
He knows a lot.
What recourse would a person have when something like this happens? Who is responsible for knowing what is, what optic company, whatever, whoever worked in there? I mean, I wouldn't know. I haven't the foggiest notion. So when something like this happens, what is the recourse?
It is confusing, I think, for a lot of us it is. So I think if it goes to claims, to me, it would be something that they could look at. Sadly, what happens is I think there's times where folks come in and do work and they don't always have the permits.
Yeah, well.
And then the city, the city, unless somebody's driving around and watching what's going on,
Yeah.
it's hard for them
Yeah.
to say, well,
Well-
who did it?
Well, and you think about it, they come in and they do the street, nobody asked us if we wanted it done. It was just done. And then we're sitting there and, people have, kind of gotten together to put in a solve the problem with the water in our yards. And then when you come back to someone and say, well, no, I guess it's just, too bad, so sad. We don't know who was in there, so,
Well,
how would you know?
I mean, we do appreciate the situation.
Yeah,
I mean, we've been looking at this for a while.
I just thought maybe I was missing something.
No, I don't think so.
No.
You know,
You would think the pipe, oh, sorry.
no, she's,
I'm one of those people that always needs to know why, but
well, no, one,
It's really, I guess, not really a question for you, but
Yeah.
the question would be, doesn't everybody usually stamp their pipes with their name on it? That's what I would think, and the optic lines.
Yeah,
so-
yeah,
It's not
because
really a
I would
question for you,
think
but-
I didn't certainly go out while they were doing that and watch,
yeah,
I
you kind of
thought.
trusted that they're.
I did it a couple of times with kids because I wanted them to see it.
It's just a generic line, and they really didn't take out a permit, and they probably didn't want to put an identifier on it.
Okay.
And that's a
Yeah,
whole
well,
other
that was
issue.
just my, I just
All right,
wanted to
well,
have
we
that.
appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay.
I might ask,
Well, let's close the
Okay,
floor first.
sorry.
Motion to close the floor by X, seconded by Larry. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
the question I have is we all have similar opinions. I've built many buildings and worked with the city. But if you're asking for likely opinions, this is probably not the place.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right, right. So we have to kind of.
That's where we're stuck, trying to
Yeah,
help.
we're a little stuck on that,
We're-
so we have to defer.
gonna
We're
defer.
sympathetic in a sense, listening to the story, but we need to go through protocol. So,
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
so Attorney Mather will work with you folks, so I guess,
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file, and it's only because I think there's a better path for you to go forward.
Okay, thank you.
I second
so,
it.
seconded by Worry, seconded by Atkins. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I will say, I've been on council a while, this is the first time I've seen something like this, so you always see something new, unfortunately for you, but.
I just only have one thing to ask Mr. Grenier. I know in my district, and I don't know a lot about it, but I know this might give you some insight. I appreciate you took it all on yourself. That's commendable. All you neighbors put together and solve the problem. It's a little more than digging a little drain ditch to go somewhere, it costs you money. So, Mr. Grenier, I know in my district down on the northeast side there, I've heard of people putting in a sewer off of but this is a city installed sewer, right?
No, this is a private.
That was a private one down,
Yes.
say off of Reber, whatever it was.
I think he's answering for them.
But I'm just asking, that wasn't a city project, that was
No,
a
this was,
private one also?
this was.
No,
the
I
same-
know that, but there is instances where the city does look at a situation and do that.
No.
Not in this case, I'm just
No.
asking, no?
No.
Okay.
We, on occasion, we do go out and assist property owners with coming up with solutions, but the implementation is always a private matter.
Even when is an alley considered a city,
An alley is actually is a public road, so that's city.
then that's probably, I haven't
Well-
inspected that, but just
well,
for sake
we
of,
can discuss that for.
yeah,
But,
I
yeah,
just wanted to clarify that while we're here.
okay.
Yeah, you're lucky that all the neighbors agreed to do it. I know I've availed myself of city staff lots of times to go out and explain, well, you could put in a big yard drain and it would solve all 6 of your neighbors' problems, and only one wanted to pay for it, so it never got done.
Right.
So,
Yeah, there was cooperation.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of you guys, seriously, because, just
It
all
works.
the work you've done, and we just hope that we can figure it out. So for now, that's about it. We voted, right? All in
Yes.
favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. All right,
I think we did.
we'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
You bet.
It's double the deal.
All right, next, we have consideration with possible action on request by Terry Johnson, 1350 Holiday Avenue, to have sidewalks removed from the Holiday Avenue frontage of the following properties. I'll wait for the pipes to leave.
Now,
Oh, we have more show and tell. Thank you.
And unless you're really raring to go, I spoke with Terry today.
Well, let me
and-
just finish.
Oh, okay.
Statement.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry about that.
It's all in one.
It's all in one. Consideration of possible action on a request by Terry Johnson, 1350 Holiday Avenue, to have sidewalks removed from the Holiday Avenue frontage of the following properties: 1344 Holiday, 1345 Holiday, 1350 Holiday, 1351 Holiday, 1354 Holiday, 1355 Holiday, 1700, 1702 Brickley, and 1714 Brickley Street, Alder Weary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, you can see from the map on Holiday, half the street has sidewalks, the other half doesn't. It just kind of ends at a property. And Ms. Johnson lives, second in from where it ends.
Right here.
And she has some repair work that needs to be done, and she thought, well, gee, am I fixing a
Holiday
sidewalk
right
that
here? Is
leads,
this Holiday? 'Cause I
that
don't
leads
see
to
it.
nowhere? Or can we just take these out and be like the other half of the street? Right, it's kind of an odd duck of a street. In speaking with them today, they're still trying to gather what the street wants to do. She knows what she wants to do, but
Right.
if it's all right, I'd like to hold this till our next meeting, because I don't know if there's quite a total consensus yet by everybody, and they're working on that, so.
But I think, wasn't one of the issues that, she wants to remove them?
Yes.
So
that-
part of it is like, and I read what you wrote, Steve, that we normally don't do that. I mean, there's a certain protocol with that as well.
Right, but again, I would
So-
concur with Alder Weary in this case that the neighborhood hasn't come up with a collective consensus yet, so until they do that.
Until they do,
I
okay.
think a request to hold would definitely be in order.
I'm glad you put it on there, and she asked to put it on there.
Sure.
I think she got a little ahead of herself, and
Well, that's
I'll
fine.
be glad to look at this.
Well, at least it's
But-
in the docket.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what do we, motion?
So, go-
Just to hold until our next
Motion to
meeting.
hold?
it's a motion to hold by Weary. Do we have a second? Second.
Second.
Well,
Thanks, Steve, for
she-
talking with her.
Second by Eck.
Receiving.
All right. To receive,
No,
but-
to
no,
hold.
no,
To
hold.
hold.
We're gonna hold it to our, probably our
Hold
next,
tight.
next meeting? Till what meeting?
I will wait until Alder
Alright.
Weary contacts
So-
me and asks me to have,
Perfect.
has to have it put back on.
All right, just
Thanks.
put it, mention it as such. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay. Consideration with possible action on request by Department of Public Works to award the contract Parks 3-22 Metro Boat Launch docks at a staff level and report the award at the next regular meeting of the Improvement and Services Committee, which is this one, correct?
No, this would
Oh, the
be-
next meeting.
Well, it would be at the meeting immediately following the award of the contract.
Okay.
Typically, the process that we use for the benefit of the two new alders who've not served on council before, with construction contracts, the contracts are bid out, we open the bids, we summarize the bids then come forward to the Improvement Service Committee. Improvement Service Committee makes a recommendation to the Common Council. The bid then goes forward to Common Council where it's formally approved. In certain rare circumstances, to further the project on a timeline that can't be met with our regular meeting schedules, there are occasions where the department will request that we deviate from that process and the council gives us the authority to actually make the award at a staff level rather than at the council level, and then we report that out. Now, when we do that, we follow the same rules and regulations that we would when we're making a recommendation to you. So we have to have the money secured in our finances. We have to award to the low responsive responsible bidder. We have to meet all of our bidding requirements, things of that nature. So what we're doing is we're accelerating the project schedule to get things done more quickly when we make those requests. Typically, those requests are reserved for very rare circumstances. Prior to about the last year or so, for many years, we used to go into a summer schedule, and the summer schedule actually started in May and ended in like September or something like that, where we went to one meeting a month. So we could let a contract, and if that contract happened to open on council, it could be as much as 6 to 8 weeks before we actually had another council meeting to award the contract, and we lost that much construction time. So again, when we had those those rare occasions where there were extenuating circumstances, we would make a request like this of the council. In this particular case, this is the boat launch facility up at the Metro docks. The in-water facilities, so when you back your trailer in, take the boat off the trailer, you tie it up at the dock, you go park your truck. Those docks, we used to have 5 of them, which would allow for 10, because they were two-sided loading. You could launch 10 boats at a time. Those docks are in excess of 30 years old. Due to wave damage, we only have 2 left. We've been cannibalizing parts and putting them back together for the last couple of years. So we bonded about $400,000, $450,000 2 years ago to start the process. We have the money on hand. We're in the process of bidding that out right now, but we're already in early May. We're hearing a lot of feedback from the boating and fishing community that they want those docks in. So staff came to me and said, the fastest we can get it in is if we don't have to go to committee and council for approval on the award of contract. We open the contract, we follow all the exact same rules and regulations. We can't just give it away. We'll go out to low responsive bidder. But if we have the authority to award that contract, the day we open it, we can start executing the contract and get the docks in as fast as we can. So we're just trying to
These are
accelerate.
the newer docks you're talking about?
These are the replacements, yeah.
And what are they made out of?
We haven't bid it out yet.
Oh, you haven't bid it out?
No. Well, actually, it's probably going out next week.
It's on the street next week.
It's on the street.
Okay.
So it's out for bid within the next 2 weeks. We should have the bids back.
So, I mean, the ones we have are fairly old, wood, et cetera.
Yeah, they're in excess of 30 years old.
So we're looking at different materials, I
Yeah.
would hope? Okay. All right.
Construction dates, June, July?
A lot of that's gonna depend on what we get back in the bids.
Yeah, I know this
So-
has been an issue for years, so
Yeah.
I'm glad we're
I
going
know,
in. Yeah,
I've gone there a lot too.
I'm totally fine.
Can I make a motion to accept as is, as stated?
Okay, motion by
I'll second it.
Second by Campbell. Any other discussion? I thank you for your description of that, Steve. I mean,
Perfect. I just want to make comment, if possible. You know, with all the big walleye tournaments and all the fishing, I mean, it's a busy place and it brings a lot of revenue into all the, I mean, they come from all over the United States to fish in these
Okay, just hold
tournaments,
on.
you know, and I know
Let's go
several
this-
of the people on
Hold
that
on.
kind of clientele. But yeah, there's a lot of complaints. I was down to visit Smokey down there, and of course, he said that, you know, he's got the bait shop down there. And he's like, when are they gonna fix the docks? And I'm like, I have to figure it out. Well, and then it shows up, so.
Now you're a part of it.
Well, we've had a whole,
Absolutely.
I've been down there
I'm a
with
boater
some
too,
private
so.
citizens, and we've met with Steve and other folks. I mean, I've been down there a
Beautiful
number of
facility,
times.
it really is.
Oh, it is, and
When it works.
The county does some things, the city does some things, we had flooding, we had this and that. But, you know, it's a revenue generator, and we need to be part of that, so, okay?
We voted on that, right?
Yes.
Okay,
All in favor?
how do we do that where we can go back and suspend the rules to change the agenda order so we can, I know Janet's on there?
Yeah, no, she's next.
To be considered. the
She is
agenda.
next? Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't
she's
think she
next.
was.
She's calling from Florida. You guys are so
Well-
patient.
It actually isn't. It's not next.
You got nothing going on tonight, right?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, is she actually number?
She's on the
10?
phone right now.
Is she
She-
number 10?
it's not next.
She's number
That's your case that I pulled you
Yeah,
from.
number 6.
I think
No,
she's 10.
6 is
Oh, no.
East Mason.
Yeah.
She's actually 10.
Oh,
We
boy.
could make a motion just to change the agenda.
We can do
Yeah,
that.
Procedurally,
Yes.
you would, sorry
It's
to
too
interject
late.
without being called on. No, it's not too late. You would just need a motion to reconsider the approval of the agenda.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
right.
And so you vote on
Yes.
that motion, and then you need a motion to amend the agenda and vote on that motion.
I've been reading my rules.
Yes,
of
well,
Robert's
good,
rules.
well, you're up on it, so that.
I'll second your motion.
Okay, by Ackman, second
We
by
took a
Weary.
vote on the other one, right?
Yes, we already took a vote to reconsider the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Okay, now do you want to make the motion as far as?
Make the
Where
motion.
you want to put it?
To
Move it
suspend
up?
the rules, right? And then bring the number 10
I'm sorry,
up,
to amend.
To amend.
the agenda.
amend the agenda to move number 10 up to after 5. So next.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, we have by Heck, seconded by Weary. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, we have Miss Angus on the phone from Florida. So, Janet, we will get to you shortly, so you're being recorded and that, so just hang on and we'll try to do the best we can with this. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm just gonna put you up by the recorder. All right, well, consideration with possible, did I already read this?
Nope.
Consideration with possible action on a request to review the city's street excavation repair policy. Alder Weary, that's your district as far as the person that was asking, but go ahead, you go.
Certainly, thanks. Well, this is another kind of unusual one, right? And I know, Steve, I think you even recommended maybe we should look at the policy. There was some damage, and that's an entirely different issue, but it resulted in some of the road needing repair, right? And according to the policy, then you would not only have to replace that portion, but to the end of the lot line? Is that the way, am I reading that correct?
Yeah, the way the policy repairs, the repair policy is, this is an asphalt street. So we have to, and the street was resurfaced less than 5 years ago. So within the documentation that we provided in the packet, there's an interoffice memo dated January 19th of 2001 from the then Public Works Director, to Carl Weber, from the Assistant Director of Public Works, Frank Dadham. And then beyond the memo, there is a 3-page document which provides the actual policy. And this policy was adopted by action of the Common Council. So this is as binding as ordinance in our world. So we look at the first item and it says street excavation repairs, pavement life 0 to 5 years old. Then the first item is bituminous pavement, which is asphalt. So what happens is where the repair is, you have to remove completely through the asphalt a minimum of 20 feet wide. Then the upper surface, because there's 2 layers of asphalt out there. There's a lower level that's between 1.5 inches and 2 inches, and then an upper layer, which is again between 1.5 inches and 2 inches. So you have a total of 3 to 4 inches of asphalt for your road.
What's the distance between those?
They're they're directly in contact,
Okay.
but you pave it in 2 separate passes.
Okay.
So that bottom layer, the binder layer, has to be removed to a minimum width of 20 feet. That allows for proper compaction of the trench and no settlement. Then the upper layer has to be milled off for the lot width. So however wide your frontage is, from property line to property line, halfway across the road. So you have a large contiguous patch. The reason for that, this dates back, again, take a look, this policy is dated 2000. At that point in time, we were still levying special assessments against all properties. And property owners who had just paid a special assessment to have the road resurfaced or reconstructed in front of their house did not want to see a patchwork quilt, even if it was an unforeseen circumstance. So in response to that, DPW developed a policy which was adopted by the council that the patch had to be large and it wasn't necessarily in front of any individual property. You weren't going to see that patch because it was at the property line, okay? Given that we now have the vehicle registration fee or the wheel tax, and that has largely done away with residential property or assessments for, special assessments for pavement construction. A lot of the impetus for the policy that we have now has been removed. We don't have that same outcry from the property owners because they're not paying a special assessment. So if the council wanted to consider something lesser than what we have, our recommendation would be to look at the second page of the policy, which is street excavation repairs, pavement life 5 to 15 years. And in there, under item A1 or A5, the length of the street to be milled and resurfaced shall be equal to the length of the cut plus 5 feet with a minimum length of 20 feet. So if you only have a 1 foot wide trench, instead of resurfacing an 80 foot wide lot, you would only resurface a 20 foot wide area. That provides adequate transition into and out of the repair area. minimizes the amount of reflective
That's the minimum
cracking.
anyhow, 20 feet. That's
What's
that's the minimum that you would.
Right. So if the committee were looking to make a change to the street excavation policy, our recommendation would be to revise the policy we have, but eliminate street excavation repairs pavement life 0 to 5.
Yes.
And
Change that.
change street excavation repairs pavement life 5 to 15 years old to be pavement life 0 to 15 years old.
Where's the 0 to 15? Oh.
There isn't
There
one
wasn't.
right now. You've got a
There
0 to
isn't.
5 and a 5 to 15. We would recommend getting rid of the 0 to 5 and making the 5 to 15 0
So-
to 15.
So, Alderek?
So just eliminating the first one altogether?
Correct.
Or okay.
So that number 1 would be out.
Correct. And we would renumber the rest of them.
Okay.
And then change it 0 to 15 instead of 5 to
And
15.
then where would the 5 to 15 come in again?
It will be
The
0.
5 to 15 would then become 0 to 15.
For all of them?
Right.
Okay. 0 to 15.
So you would have one way of repairing the street if it's less than 15 years old, and a different way if it's more than 15.
So would the text, would all of this change at all in any way, or would
No.
it? Okay. That would just be the, Alder Wery?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's fair. And Director, you don't have a problem with that change, because it sounds like it went from more of an aesthetic thing. It wasn't, I made a new word, engineerical. It wasn't engineerical.
Again, there may be some minor text edits, but from a substantive reason, no. The primary reason to have that differentiation between, at 15 years, you're starting to get into the life cycle of the pavement, so we can have a lesser, because you've used up a substantial amount of the pavement life. I'd still recommend holding that 15 as a break point. But the 0 to 5 was largely because for unpaid special assessments, if you don't pay the special assessment in full, it goes onto a payment plan and you're paying for it for the next 5 years. We didn't want folks having a patch in front of their house while they're still paying off their special assessments. Seeing as they're no longer paying the special assessments, that irritant is really not there anymore.
Was there a concern that you had though, as far as like, when you said, when the road is finished? Like when do you start the date of a road?
Generally speaking, we start that clock ticking when the city accepts the pavement. That is one of two things. The paving is complete and we've paid we've issued final payment to the contractor, or if final payment isn't being made because we're going over winter, it would be the end of the construction season.
I was going to say, that's not in the policy, though. Should something about it, should it really be when it's completed? Because that's really when it's 0 years old. You're born.
Yeah,
It could be a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 month delay.
Well, at most, we would be looking at a 3-month delay.
Okay. Maybe look at specifying that too, because really, when you read it, you don't know when that clock starts. And I appreciate you offering up that suggestion, because in Janet's case, Miss Angus, her property's 200 feet wide. So,
Right.
Yeah.
so
Just
to
a little
repair a little 5-foot section, and then to have someone pay for 200 feet of a beautiful new road to put in another beautiful new road seems, just excessive. And so I think this is a good.
So this, you feel
Yeah, I
confident
do.
that this might
Yeah.
take care of that? Alder X?
In this case, I did stop out there and I took pictures of it on my way here. And it looks as though you did make an exception because you didn't do 200 feet. Correct?
The permanent
Am I
pavement
right?
repair has not been completed yet.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
temporary
I-
pavement repair.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I thought that it was like in the final stages
Uh-huh.
because it was filled in. I have the pictures.
That's
Plus
They're
the-
wondering, what the heck are you taking pictures? But I wanted to get, I need visual.
That's
Well,
just
one-
the
it's
little
one
one where the
parcel,
work was
too.
done.
Oh,
But then
okay, okay.
the policy would be, do you just fill in and repair that area, or you go 200 feet all the way down to the lot line, rip it all up and replace it?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, got it.
So she has one parcel, but she has 3 different buildings on
Yeah,
that
I just
parcel.
thought it was in the
So
process
that-
of being finished,
I thought,
completed,
was
and it
there-
only looked like a 20-foot maybe.
There might have been a concern about, subdividing and all that kind of stuff, but it sounds to me like we're just looking at this repair.
Right, this would
Just the
resolve
repair.
that. I mean,
Is-
you can-
So,
Miss Angus, can you hear all that?
I can, yeah.
Okay,
So we can backdate it?
Yeah,
It
so
would have to
just
be
just
backdated.
hang on for a minute. Okay.
The policy, I mean.
I just, she's in Florida. I just wanted to, do we have to open the floor?
Yeah. I'll make a motion to open the floor.
Motion to open the floor by Weary, seconded by
On
Campbell.
the phone?
Open the phone. We're opening the phone. I don't think I've ever done that. So state your name and address for the record.
Janet Akins, 1403 Shirley Street, Green Bay, Wisconsin. You know, if they changed the policy from 0 to 15 years, and then I guess it doesn't affect me as much. But there's no way that repairing 200 feet of both sides of the road seemed equitable to me, given the fact that the hole in the road that they put in the road today is only 6 feet, I think 6 feet by 6 feet, I was told. So the sewer's been fixed. It was an emergency situation. Hard to find a sewer repair person right now. I appreciate your time, Alder Stoyer. I appreciate you giving me the policy because I had not seen that before yesterday. So I do appreciate that. And I really don't have anything else to add. I think, you know, if it's 5 feet, you know, of surrounding the area, 20 feet minimum, that seems less burdensome to me than the prior rule.
Okay. Well, we discussed it at committee here, and we talked to Director Grenier about it, and sounds very amenable to reworking this. It's a 22-year-old document that has changed now because of, well, the wheel tax. I guess that's one of the big
This is
things.
a rare thing that was in place before I was on council. What the heck?
Yeah, so do anybody have questions of Ms. Angus?
Nope.
No? All right, Janet, we're gonna close the floor, so we'll make a motion. So we'll take care of it, all right?
Motion to close the phone,
We'll talk, we gotta close the
Floor.
phone.
floor phone.
Yes.
I'll talk to you later, take care, bye-bye.
Second to hang up.
Motion that, motion to close was made by
Oh,
Weary
Weary and I second.
X, second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Well, that's a first for us, that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Technology, it's the best. All right, here we go. So we're gonna move back up here.
Do we need to make a motion about the policy?
The
change?
Yeah, let's make a motion, please.
Make
We
a
close the
motion to take out number 1 and change number 2 to 0 to 15 of the street repair, or the,
Was, Steve, would that be
City street
necessary, or
excavation.
I mean, we talked about it. Do we have to be that specific, or?
You can if you wish to.
Okay, if you want to be specific on it, go ahead. I mean,
okay.
yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Yeah, I'll second it. Oh.
Just for
Yeah.
guidance, Alder, it's also appropriate to just direct staff to revise the policy as discussed.
Okay,
You- that-
that's a lot
There you go.
quicker.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
all. Yeah. So why don't we,
So we'll do what she said.
okay, all direct?
A second.
And a second by Campbell.
And if I might offer an amendment, and apply the policy to the repair discussed on Shirley Street.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's why I
Or
was
Shirley
saying
or
about the
Locust,
back.
whichever it
Shirley
is.
Are there
Shirley.
other pending repairs right now that this
I
might
don't know
affect?
if there are, but if
Yeah.
there,
Really, it's yours.
That would be my
It's not called
recommendation,
Shirley.
that you apply it to any pending repairs.
okay, and apply it to any pending repairs as of 5/11/22.
Sounds good.
Yes. 13.
All right.
I don't know what day it is.
Okay, so do we,
So
so.
might ask for him to reread what
Go
they
reread that,
discussed.
and then all the worries you're gonna have to leave. So we're
Yes.
voting on this, and then all the worries gonna have to leave.
We vote?
Pardon?
What did we
Well,
have
he's
for-
still,
With the
read it
amendment.
back to us again, Steve.
So it's a motion by Alder X, seconded by Alder Weary, to revise the city's street excavation repair policy as discussed and apply to any pending repairs.
For that specific street, or just
No,
pending
any
repairs?
pending repairs.
Which would cover
Just so
that.
it applies equally
Just-
across the city.
Okay, All right, that sounds good.
Is
You
that way we
satisfied
got
with that?
Janet? Is that way we got
Yes.
Janet on phone?
Yes.
Yeah.
That will take care of anything.
Okay.
All right, so we all voted, did we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. Aye.
That was the motion, you seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
My apologies.
Thank
I
you all
need
the
to-
worry, you gotta run.
Need to depart. Son's being confirmed tomorrow, so I have some things to attend to tonight.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.
Shit.
All right, let's move along
Thanks,
here.
Steve.
Getting through it. Number 6, consideration with possible action on a request by Department of Public Works to create a 12-foot wide utility easement at back of right-of-way on parcels 14-1094 and 21-1283 along East Mason Street. Director?
Over the past several years, as we heard with the prior item on the agenda tonight, the right-of-way is becoming a finite resource. There's a lot of competing needs that have occupation requirements within the public right-of-way, and not always a whole lot of room to house those needs. So what we have been requiring for probably around 10 years or so, maybe a little bit more, is when properties are platted, on the private side of the property line, we're also requiring developers to record a 12-foot wide utility easement on the private property. And that provides a home outside of the public right-of-way for utilities like gas, electric, and telecom. In older areas of the city that were platted before we had those requirements, we're often left with just the public right-of-way as a place to put things. So whenever and wherever we can, on city-owned properties, we are recording those similar types of utility easements to provide a place for those utilities to go in, along especially major thoroughfares like East Mason Street. So what we provided to you are 2 maps. The first one shows an area along East Mason at South Clay Street. So this is in the vicinity of the hospitals. And on the North Clay Street side, or South Clay Street north of East Mason, okay? So where the cul-de-sac comes in from the top of the drawing down towards the bottom. The property immediately to the east, if you look really carefully, I had to look for it myself, there is a line drawn paralleling the sidewalk here that has some faint hatching. Now, it doesn't show up as well because we were trying to give you the aerial photo, and the photo is kind of conflicting with the hatching. But that is where we're proposing to record a 12-foot wide utility easement on that city parcel. Then if you flip over to the next page, this is East Mason at Cass Street. So if you're familiar with Happy Joe's Pizza, Happy Joe's is in the lower right-hand corner of the drawing. There's a triangularly shaped piece of city property immediately to the west of Happy Joe's, and we're looking to record a 12-foot wide utility easement paralleling East Mason Street, starting at the property line and progressing on into the property.
Okay, are there any easements in there right now?
There are not.
Okay, and that utility easement would be utilized for?
The utility easement is strictly regulated for utility purposes, so gas,
any-
electric, telecom, things of that nature
Fiber
would go in there.
optic?
Fiber optic, well, fiber optic is telecom,
Okay.
telecommunication.
All right.
But not in this case.
I
We
just
don't
got a
know.
question.
Alderman Campbell?
When you said the 3 items there, so telecom is a city-owned
No,
service?
no. But gas and electric is not city-owned either.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, again, it's to provide a home for those utilities that are necessary for a property to be occupied, but we're trying to get those folks outside of the right-of-way, leaving the right-of-way more so for our purposes, for city municipal services.
Just in these 2 locations?
On these 2 locations.
This is actually a larger item. We're only asking for them here because these do not currently exist. Again, the way that our zoning and subdivision and planning codes read, we require, in new subdivisions, new residential subdivisions, we're already requiring these 12-foot wide utility easements all over the place and have been for many, many years already.
So, Alderman Campbell, I'm just going to chime in here. So we're looking at these 2 specific areas, but are you saying that, like along East Mason Street, there must be utility easements all along there?
There may or may
Well,
not be,
and then
we
I
don't
guess-
know, but where we control the property, where it's city-owned property,
I see.
we're recording the easement, so we have that ability to get
Okay,
those
so
telecom utilities
If
out.
somebody else, some private firm wanted it, or private entity wanted to do something, they'd have to deal with it accordingly?
Correct, and generally speaking, an easement is an acquired property right. You don't have that right naturally, you have to acquire it. And oftentimes, most often, there's a cost associated with doing that. We're not necessarily looking on city-owned property.
Yeah. That's not a cost,
Well,
per se.
there's not really it's in our best interest to have those utilities outside the public right-of-way. So I wouldn't want a utility company to have to purchase those rights from me for something that I want. It's the city's best interest to do it. So we would offer that easement up to the utility companies at no cost. We're just recording that easement to get them out of the right-of-way.
I see. Alderette?
I just want to clarify, you're saying it's city-owned property right
Yes.
now?
Yeah,
Okay,
Right.
all right.
So, okay, that's well explained, I appreciate that. Committee, anything else? Otherwise,
I was just going to make a motion to accept as written.
okay, by Eck. Second
Second.
by Campbell. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, finally, we're getting to you guys. I'm gonna have to owe you something later, I guess.
To who?
Yeah. Consideration
You?
with possible, consider with possible action to approve the text amendments to chapter 16 and 42 relating to stormwater management. You know what? Okay, yeah, I read the right one.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay, we're gonna try to give you the short version.
yeah.
There's a lot of information
Alderette?
that,
I was going to ask if we could put it off to our next meeting. Alder Weary has a lot of notes, questions. I have questions too, but
Okay.
I just
Well-
thought maybe it would be easier if we did
If I
that.
could just
Alder,
answer that.
or Attorney Mather?
Sorry, I don't mean to speak for you, Melissa. This was a coordinated effort with the ordinances that also had to go to our planning commission to get approved changes to the zoning code. So the intention was to have them go in the same committee week so that the entire
Oh,
set, if you will, of changes would be
Mhm.
discussed at one council meeting.
so we did that already at planning?
Plan was on Monday.
So we did, and that went through?
Those went through.
Okay.
For chapter 44. For chapter 44, yep, this is separate.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean you can't do it, that's just why, that's our preference would be that you would discuss it this week. You will all obviously have a chance to discuss it at council if somebody pulls the item,
Right.
but that's all.
So that's for
I'm not-
44, but this is different? I guess, I just,
Yes,
This is
So-
16 and 42.
it's entirely possible that that item on chapter 44 may get pulled from the plan commission agenda.
mhm.
And be discussed.
At
But
council.
those would be discussions only about the zoning code changes, which are completely separate from these, which are strictly related to stormwater management.
Well, with that being said, I don't know if you have, staff speak to it as well, yes? Did you want to speak to that?
Yes,
Melissa?
Steve was going to start, and
Okay.
I have plenty of
All right.
additional information.
And I appreciate all the all the worries said about this too, but I'd like to hear from staff. So,
okay,
have
well.
at it.
Melissa Schmitz, the resiliency coordinator, is with us tonight. She has been kind of shepherding this along as she prepared the synopsis and information that's included in the packet. So the first of which is a memo to the Improvement Service Committee, which outlines the proposed green infrastructure amendments to Chapter 16 and 42. This started several years ago, back in 2019, with a code audit, and the intent of that code audit was to remove barriers that would prohibit the implementation of green infrastructure. So with that, our existing municipal ordinance was reviewed, and areas where existing code language prohibited or inhibited the ability for property owners to implement green infrastructure on private property were identified. In addition to removing the barriers, as we got into the process of looking at the codes, it was decided to provide code changes that not only remove barriers, but also encouraged folks to implement green infrastructure. There is no requirement. So there's nothing about these ordinances that forces green infrastructure on anybody. It simply opens the door and makes it an option that somebody can pursue should they deem that they would like to do that. So with that in mind, Melissa first provided you with a chronology on the green infrastructure code audits, a one-page document that talks about tackling barriers to green infrastructure, kind of outlining the process. Then the next several pages are a table that show you the relevant chapters within Green Bay Municipal Code that have been amended and what those amendments entail. So first you have chapter 16 and 42 relating to stormwater management. That's what we're talking about tonight. The chapter 44 is what we plan on Monday. The next several pages are general ordinance pertaining to chapter 16 and 42. So that's essentially a red line document showing the original code language and the proposed amended. If this were to be recommended for approval, this general ordinance would then be numbered and it would be included in the council packet for an ordinance first reading at the next council meeting. So that's kind of the overview of where we're at and what's being proposed, so then we would open it up for questions from the committee.
Well, there's a lot here. Melissa, if would you like to come up and speak to this as well?
Yeah, I'm just gonna,
Just.
I have something on my computer that I'm gonna put up
Oh.
on the TV, just so that I don't
Sure.
have to, it just gives you a little more
Okay.
visual.
Committee, Melissa, assisting our resiliency?
Yeah, resiliency
That's a
coordinator.
hard word to say.
We've all met.
Yes, we have.
I just don't know if that, this larger screen right now.
I think that's a different control.
I can kind of read
I don't know, I
that.
went through this with Mike Ronick today, and
Oh, really?
he said
I'm not gonna
it's,
touch
there it
it,
is,
I
there it is, there it is. That one's a little smaller, so it's hard to really see. So as Steve mentioned, this project that we all started calling, it was the Green Infrastructure Code Audit Project, or Code Project. And it started in 2019. This was before I was even a city employee. Let me just make my screen a little bit bigger. Okay. And so a little bit of background on green infrastructure. It's part of an overall strategy to build a city resilient to changing climate. Traditional gray infrastructure, which is, what we typically use and how we engineer our stormwater conveyance, will continue to bear the bulk of the burden in terms of the stormwater conveyance. But as a city, staff believes it's important to utilize innovative engineering approaches and best management practices such as green infrastructure to minimize impacts to city infrastructure, private property, and reduce pollutants from stormwater discharges, which is, So if you have any questions just on that description,
So,
the two pictures that you're looking at right there, the one on the right is a permeable paver. Those are parking spots. They're interlocking permeable pavers. And then the picture on the left, you also see a permeable parking area, but then you also have a landscape median with curb cuts that allow the stormwater to go into that landscape median to infiltrate stormwater and treat stormwater instead of it automatically going into our traditional gray infrastructure stormwater conveyance.
so the question I had, we talk about pollutants, and it's in a city, it's in an urban environment. I always think of, the pollutants out in farm country and things leaching into the rivers and that kind of stuff. With this, it's road salt, what else?
Well, we also have nutrients coming in,
Nutrients coming in.
phosphorus as well. To a lesser extent, versus runoff from an ag field, but, we use
For-
We use all these fertilizers on our lawns, private and public. So, we have that, there's heavy metals, there's just a lot of different things. And we have a great street cleaning program, but it doesn't eliminate everything. Mhm.
So the permeable pavers, just in your estimation, Melissa, what, how, is there a percentage that you can put on it to say like it'll eliminate X amount, or is it just a guess?
Each
You know, it
situation is
depends.
a little bit different, but there are some really good estimations. The book that we used, this manual, Tackling Barriers to Green Infrastructure, which was co-written by Julia Nordyke right over here. She works for UWC Grant, and she's also she's a commissioner on the Sustainability Commission. So there are, and I encourage you, if you want a copy of this, I can get you extra copies, but for different green infrastructure practices, there are estimations, and this is based on science, this is based on a lot of research that's already been done on what the runoff volume, the actual volume of water reduction would be, and total suspended solids, which is...
Melissa, could you come up here, because we're recording?
Yeah, sure.
I know your voice is carrying, but I just
I
want
know,
to make
I'm
sure.
sorry, I'm just figuring out how I'm gonna advance the slide.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. Well, can you,
So we use this book, like I was saying, and this book is not just provides, good technical information. There is a process that the staff went through for initially identifying what some of the barriers are, either within the code, but also just as a city, what the barriers are to green infrastructure. So that's where this whole process started. And then that led to a grant was written and received by the city to hire a consultant to do the audit of the codes. This was done, the grant was awarded sometime in, you probably can advance the slide because I think I have some of the timelines right here. The timelines are right here. The Great Lakes Champion mini grant, and that money was used to hire a consultant. And this is a consultant that has done work at least 8 or 9 different cities in Wisconsin and in different municipalities across the country.
did the grant cover quite a bit of the?
It covered all of the consultant
Okay.
fees.
All right,
All of the consultant fees.
good.
So that was happening in January of 2020 when the consultant was hired. And then she worked for several months examining the different codes. So there were zoning codes. There was a lot of zoning codes looked at. And then the stormwater ordinance was also looked at. And then another one that was looked at was our noxious weeds and maintenance of vegetation, which was amended, and that was adopted last year already.
How many, were any of the codes amended or changed then? Since
The one for the noxious weeds and maintenance of vegetation, that one was amended. We implemented some changes to our planned natural landscaping, which encourages more natural landscaping, which is a form of green infrastructure because native plants have very, very deep root systems. So that one has already been passed.
So with all of this, it's kind of a piecemeal thing, right? We're kind of going through step by step on all of this.
Yeah, we are like in the home stretch though, almost here.
All right.
Yeah, we've done the code, the workshop was held, and then from the time I was hired in October of 2020, that's where I started coordinating with all the various departments. So parks, forestry, public works, law. I'm sure there's others that because I don't have all my notes right in front of me, but there was a lot of coordination with looking at those recommendations that the consultant made, they were recommendations. It wasn't a total rewrite of the code, but then working with staff to say, are these things realistic? Are they doable? And then making different changes based on that, based on staff feedback. And then after all of that was done and the changes were incorporated, and this was staff of all different levels, not just director level. It was, everybody. There was just a lot of people involved, and
From the city.
From the city, yeah, from the city.
Okay.
And then after that, there was a preliminary law review done,
And then we took it back again to the staff, saying, okay, this is what staff wants, or staff is recommending. Law looks at it like, well, we're going to make some more tweaks. So it was a very, very lengthy process, and then after all of that, the city had a recodification. So all of those numbers that you're seeing, 42, 16, 24, those numbers had to all be redone. And then the project kind of paused for a little bit until we waited until the recodification was final.
How long did that, that was the law department, you had a
It was a little bit of
recount?
a pause.
The recon was a year ago, so.
So it
but
took that long?
No,
Or
it
just-
didn't
it
take
just-
that long to do the numbers, no. Melissa and I were still going back and forth with
Nice.
modifications to
Yeah.
several of the different ordinances and getting staff approvals, like she's saying. She's doing a great job.
Okay.
And, it boils it down, but there's, every staff person has a finite amount of work time, so saying, hey, let's review these together, it all takes, there's just a big process in it. But with that process, we had a lot of buy-in and a lot of input,
Well, I mean,
which is a positive.
just looking at city issues, a lot of departments will work together on different things. Did you find that this was a very positive venture for you, as far as, getting all the departments working together?
Yeah, I would say it was a big challenge, but it was very beneficial to have different departments talking. And we had meetings at the development team meeting to go through the recommendations. So there were department heads talking about it. There were me meeting one-on-one with utility engineer, to park planner, to city forester, for different aspects of the recommended code changes, and getting their professional opinion and professional input on were these recommendations.
So that all come together in the law, you had to take a look at that after the fact?
Yeah, and just to Melissa's credit, a large amount of the delay was just owing to the volume of work that the law department has currently. So
What?
Melissa's been, Lindsay, did you get those edits done? Which I appreciate, because it keeps me on task, because otherwise I would let them go forever. But
We have
it
Logan on
really,
board
she's
now.
been raring to go with this for a long time, and unfortunately the holdup was mostly on my end, just because we've had so many
Okay.
things going. But as you've all met tonight, we have our new staff member, so hopefully projects like this should go more quickly.
So it's Logan Wood, right?
Yes.
Logan would do it.
Oh gosh,
I apologize.
channeling Alder Scannell.
Yeah, sorry.
And then,
Anyway.
then the last part of that timeline was on just a few days ago, the Plan Commission, we went through a presentation with Plan Commission and outlined all of the changes to Chapter 44, which are much more extensive than what you are viewing for tonight, for the stormwater.
Right.
Could you go to
Well-
the next slide? Oh, one back. It's the outreach part.
So that's on.
Sorry, I think I just pushed the wrong.
So we have that in this document right here?
Not particular
Not
on this
particular.
one. The other thing I wanted you all to know is that I outreached to over 220 contractors, excavators, sidewalk contractors, landscapers, people that have tree contracts with the city, developers and real estate groups, and other stakeholders with all of these to get public feedback with the summary. So the summary pages that you received, they also received that email to everyone.
Then you weren't showing any preference, you just were trying to get information from?
No,
from
I
those
I
groups?
wanted to send this out because some of these changes, when we have someone apply for if they're gonna do a redevelopment project or a new construction project, that
They need to know.
that green infrastructure is, hey, guess what? You can do green infrastructure. Not that they couldn't before, but just to.
This will help.
This will help, and then also so that they know that there are going to be changes coming. It's just part of gaining community buy-in and also trying to garner feedback from the community as well.
So what sorry, go ahead.
And I didn't cherry pick. I picked everyone that had permits with the city for the last couple of years. That's where I drew my contact information.
Alder Eck and then Alder Campbell.
Yeah,
We'll get you.
This goes with what you're saying. Actually, these are some of the notes that Alder Weir put
Okay.
on here. Is it in line, okay, so is it so strict that it would discourage development? It sounds like you've got the buy-in for it. You're saying the contractors, and it wouldn't cause more, make it more difficult to develop.
No, and these, Steve had already mentioned this, these are not new mandates. This is basically, you know, a lot of the big changes in the stormwater code, we're adding definitions in that were never in our code before. So if you go to that very first section, probably, you know, in the actual markup, there's definitions of green infrastructure. So what is a green roof? What is a cistern? What is a rain barrel? What are permeable surfacing? Those kinds of changes that by putting those in, you know, not having them is sort of a barrier, because it's like, well, what you don't see, maybe you don't know that is a possibility to implement. So those are the kinds of things we're encouraging. But by no means are we saying if you are putting up a new building, you have to have, you know, X% of green infrastructure in your stormwater plan.
And I guess to build on that, Alderek, there were barriers to green infrastructure before because our ordinance was silent on green infrastructure. There was nothing in the ordinance that discussed it at all. So it was arguable as to whether or not you could even do it because the code was silent on it. At best, it was interpretive. By adding these provisions in, it now provides guidelines if you so choose to utilize that as but it in no way obligates anybody. There's no mandate associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
It
Okay.
simply provides the opportunity for somebody to use it if they wish to.
All right, and I did want to clarify that. You said it when you first
Yep.
started your presentation, but when I see ordinance, you know, I think of law, and so just making sure it's not forced, but
Nope.
As
What we
guide.
did, again, the code audit started because we had developers coming in who wanted to implement green infrastructure, but they couldn't find the rules under which that could happen within our ordinance because our ordinance was silent. So we had to remove those barriers. We had to provide them with something that should they wish to do that. And a lot of the folks, some of the green infrastructure impetus started with redevelopment. So you've got an existing site that you're going to redevelop into something else. And as you're redeveloping, the zoning ordinance is really where it started, and the stormwater ordinances. You now have to meet those stormwater goals, and you have to meet some of the zoning criteria. And there wasn't enough area on the site to do that using traditional means. So the developer's sitting there saying, I really want to do this project, but I'm trying to stuff 8 gallons worth of stuff into a 5-gallon pail, and there's no room.
Mm-hmm.
If I were allowed to use green infrastructure, if I could put a green roof on it, if I could make my parking lot permeable, that would help me meet the goals or the requirements that I need to, but I don't know how to do that because your ordinances don't give me any ability to do that. You're silent on it. So again, what we started off with was remove the barrier. Once we got into the code audit, we said not only can we remove the barrier, if we write the language just a little bit differently, we can show you how there's a benefit. We can tell you there's an incentive for you to do that. Now, it doesn't mean a financial incentive, okay? You have been given these tools now, the building blocks, where you can structure as little or as much as you want. But again, there's no mandate associated with any of these. All of it's completely voluntary.
So,
Alder
I-
Campbell? Go ahead, Alder Campbell.
So, she says mandate, you're the ordinance guy. When does mandate turn into ordinance?
No,
She
I
clarified
think
some of
Melissa's
that.
saying mandate.
Just let me
No.
ask you in a comparison. So, you know, I've owned several properties. So a 15-foot green space, now they added infrastructure. So what you're just used as an example, say on a corner of whatever, and you have to have 15 feet of green space, even though it's all concrete there, you gotta tear it out, you wanna do any changes to the building for such. This is gonna give a possibility for that user to put a drainable, more surface in, to replace the 15 feet, let's say, because that's an ordinance, right? 15 feet green space. say on a corner. I mean, I had a
Sure.
property, so you couldn't develop it because you would have had to tear out all this concrete and put now you don't have no parking. You know what I mean? Those are always gonna be issues, so
Okay, so
where does
let's-
does this work hand in hand with that?
It does, it does. Let me try to expand on that. So the requirement under zoning obligates you to have a 15-foot green space. You can have that as grass that you have to cut every week, and that to get the grass to sheet off properly, the grass is elevated above the height of your parking lot, right?
Yeah, I get it.
Okay. That's traditional way of doing things.
Right.
Instead, you can actually lower the green space below the level of your parking lot, make your parking lot drain into it, and plant it with shrubs, and get that water to infiltrate instead of having grass. Now, you don't have to cut it. You're not burning gas. You're not giving emissions off of your lawnmower, and the water's sinking in, okay?
Yeah.
Different way of looking at the same old problem.
Right. That's
And by having that water infiltrate, now you don't have to send the water to a stormwater pond because it's infiltrating. You've accomplished your stormwater management goals. You've stopped that runoff from reaching the street and getting into the storm sewers, which contributes to flooding and ponding. And you've provided a better long-term solution, which is more sustainable. What I just described to you is green infrastructure.
Yeah, right. I use
So
it as an
again,
example for
our old ordinance, we were silent on it, so it was arguable as to whether you could even do that. And especially as it relates to the stormwater management criteria, we didn't offer you credit towards meeting your stormwater goals for doing something like I just described. Now these code changes, if you choose to do this, instead of send it to a pond, we'll count that towards your stormwater goals. We'll count that towards your pollution reduction goals.
So what do you get for that? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I mean,
I just,
go ahead.
so you
Go
saw
ahead.
my hand raised.
Go ahead.
Okay, so going along with that, two things. Is this something that's going to be implemented in the areas where we have flooding problems right now?
It
Like
gets
on the East
implemented
River?
citywide.
Okay. And then, second of all, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I know, so cars leak oil and then the water drains into this green area. What's the
So-
effect on that?
There's,
Or the plants can stay
every
Right.
every biosystem has a certain amount of capacity to treat those kind of things, okay? Obviously, leaking automotive fuels or fluids are not a good thing for plant life, okay? But we'd rather have it in something like this than get directly. The alternative is those same automotive fluids leak onto a parking lot, and 3 feet away, there's a drain that goes directly to the Fox River. Your path to the river is that quick, as opposed to here, the plants have some opportunity for biologic uptake and reduce those hydrocarbons, break them down into something else, the way nature heals itself, okay? So this is actually a better option than having a hard surface where it can immediately run off, get into a storm sewer, and off to the lake.
The other thing that I would add is that if a business development is putting in green infrastructure as part of their stormwater management plan for the site, it needs to include, and this is not a new requirement, this is part of a stormwater management plan, it has to include how they're gonna maintain those stormwater features, which might be street sweeping or, their parking lot areas, so that when there is, oil and all the normal things that come off of cars, or we may have to go through and clean out the litter and all the dirt and everything else, debris that's accumulating in those areas. So that's part of our normal stormwater management requirement. That is, been on the books forever as far as having a maintenance plan in place.
Are there, like I said, advantages? It's not mandatory, but if folks decide to do this type of green infrastructure, besides just the benefits to the environment, et cetera, are there, would you say, credits, or is there something?
Biggest ones that I can tell you about, when a development is going in, there are quantity of runoff, so the sheer amount of water that's being sheeted off, and quality, your stormwater pollutants, so primarily total suspended solids and phosphorus. There are requirements you have to meet, a developer has to meet on a new development, and then there's requirements on a redevelopment. Oftentimes what we find is, as you're trying, as a developer, you want to maximize that return on investment. You want to develop as much as that property as you can, because square footage equals revenue. Dedicating any of that square footage to stormwater management purposes, you're not going to get a return on investment there. That's kind of, you're netting that off of your gross, okay? So we often get complaints, criticism, concerns expressed by the development community that the project can't go because I can't get enough whatever, floor space for sales, rentals, whatever product they're putting on that site. They want to get as much product on the site, not use the site for stormwater management, but we need to have the stormwater management because that goes all the way up to EPA. So a lot of times we build these large regional ponds and these people pay a fee in lieu of. You'll see that in our service fees every year. If they don't have a facility on site to treat that stormwater and they got to discharge the stormwater to a city-owned facility, we're going to recover our investment. A small 6-acre pond is running about $1.5 million right now. And that's really only enough to treat about 10 acres of residential. It's only about 1.5 acres of commercial because of the amount of impervious area. So somebody's got to treat that stormwater. Now, as Alder Campbell alluded to, the zoning ordinance requires that you have to have a certain amount of green space on the site anyway. If you can dual purpose that green space to meet both your green space requirements and your stormwater requirements, that's the incentive. What we're saying with these code audits is not only are we giving you guidance on if you decide to use green instead of gray, here's what you'd have to do to meet that, but if you do that, we'll count that towards your stormwater. That's less stormwater offsite that you have to treat.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, because you said it will go in the drain and straight to the Fox River, but there is the water treatment facility, correct?
No.
Not for stormwater.
Not for the
management.
stormwater, okay, just,
That's for
Stormwater
sanitary.
and the stuff that goes down your drain at home, down the sink, two different sewer systems.
okay. I'm going on a tour.
Yeah,
You will
When
learn a
am I going,
lot.
tomorrow, I think?
you have to
So
write
much
a
on my-
report.
right.
Write a report.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just call me. I can-
there's a lot of stuff, isn't there?
The other,
Yeah.
the other incentive, which is really a financial incentive with these, is that if a development implements, let's say, a green permeable parking lot, and that's approved by the director or the director's designee as an approved part of that stormwater management plan, that green parking lot or that green roof is now deducted from their equivalent runoff units, which is how stormwater is charged out. So if you have a 5-acre lot and, 2 of that is going to be converted into green infrastructure, that area is now not charged for the equivalent runoff units. So that's a financial incentive.
So on your water bill, there's a charge for water, there's a charge for sewer, and there's a charge for stormwater. The stormwater charge is based off of the impervious amount of square footage on your property. So the more impervious area you have, hard surfaces, roofs, that kind of stuff, that water runs off. That runoff is what we're charging the stormwater fee for. As Melissa's indicating, if you implement green infrastructure, that water's no longer running off, so you don't get, your stormwater charge goes down.
And what, can you give a number, kind of just a percentage, or, let's say?
It's
It
dependent
depends on the size of the.
It's dependent on the
Yeah.
size and the
Right.
type that you use.
Right. But like I said, whether you're paying a fee or you're just saving money, there's, there's different ways to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Especially today.
yes. Well, are we still moving along here? You got
I
anything
think there's
there?
just one other slide, and it's all the stuff that's in your packet, the summary of, there's just a few more pictures that I put up of some green infrastructure examples, in a roadway and a bioswale on the top one, also in a road, in the right-of-way, with some plantings in the center, how it slopes down, similar to, doesn't look like this, but our bioswale on Webster Avenue that was done, I don't know how many years ago now, Steve. But that's a bioswale. It doesn't have pretty flowers in it, but that's what that is. It's treating stormwater that runs off of Webster as you head towards Bay Beach.
The top one, you're saying?
Yeah, that's not in Green Bay, but that's an example of that. And then the bottom one is rain barrels, of course, which is also another type, a very small type of green infrastructure that homeowners can do. So
So we're still in the process of working through all of this. What other communities have, at least in the state, have done this, and what kind of success are we talking about?
I have that on my computer. It was just something I was going to speak to, so I'm going to unplug because it's not a slide. But yeah, so sure. This is green infrastructure code amendments have been. You're talking about like what other communities have actually done the code amendments?
Right, and I know this isn't, some of this has been around for a little while, but, it's not, it's more recent than not, right?
Sure.
So
This is kind of, here's a timeline of different cities in Wisconsin that have done this, but Wauwatosa, which is near Milwaukee, in 2000, they did their audit in 2013. And they also incorporated their changes into their parking and landscaping standards in 2013 as well, same year. City of Milwaukee, 2009, and in 2013, they've done 2 sets of changes. And then Oak Creek, 2015, they did an overhaul on their zoning in 2018, and they are continuing to adopt different green infrastructure recommendations from then. Superior, they adopted changes in 2018. And then Bayfield adopted new landscaping standard regulations, and that was specifically for residential properties, but also green infrastructure in 2021. And City of Madison did their audit just last year in 2021, so they're just starting the process that we started in 2019.
I'm just saying, when you do this implementation over a period of a couple of years, it takes time to understand, what there's benefits that that you're talking about, but measurables. Is there any kind of?
Well, City of Wauwatosa, so they did theirs in their audit in 2013 as a result of those like just within their public properties. I don't know the specifics on what they've done on their private properties, but they have a green alley program. So they're in the process of converting all of their alleys into green, permeable, green meaning permeable pavers with center strips. I think they've converted, I don't know how many they've converted at this
alleys,
point.
We'll be talking to you about that.
So that, that's one way that they decided to roll that out within City of Wauwatosa's properties. They decided to do green alleys. City of Madison they've started a program where they're doing permeable concrete when they do a road reconstruction on the aprons in the residential areas. Just in a small area to catch that water that's coming off of driveways. And they're doing that actually as a research project with the U.S. Geological Survey. They have a lot of different academic resources down there, that are right in that area. City of Milwaukee, along with their MMSD, they have a very strong relationship, so they've just done a ton of different green infrastructure on public and private.
But the public infrastructure, implementing green infrastructure into the public domain, we don't need the code audits, we don't need code revisions for that. We've been doing that over the years, okay? There's a parking lot at Bay Beach that's constructed with pervious pavement. As Melissa alluded to, the median on North Webster Avenue was constructed typically, okay, if you drive down Velp Avenue and Mather, there we have a boulevard section, so there's a median down the center with the lights in it and everything, and that's built higher than the road segment. Okay, so the water sheets off, gets to the road. North Webster is built inverted, so the median is lower than the road, and we reverse slope the road to drain towards the center, and then created a biofilter for stormwater management, okay? City Deck, when we built City Deck in 2008, a large portion of the brickwork on City Deck is constructed with pervious paver bricks for stormwater management there. So we've been doing, we've been utilizing green infrastructure on municipal projects for over a decade already. What these code audits do is they help bring that beyond the public, because we can do what we want within our right of way, all right? We had to have the code addressed because the code was silent before, and provide those opportunities on private property should somebody choose to do it. Again, there's no requirement, there is no mandate.
Alderman?
Well, and this is really aside from the ordinance, but I want to bring it back to, we've got the flooding issues on, the East River. So if it's been in already there, I just want, and it's something, when I was running for office, as I said, I want to find out what's the root of the issue and get to the root of the issue as far as the flooding, what we can do to prevent the flooding. I know we purchase rain barrels or whatever. I don't think that, to me, that's not a long-term solution. So,
Right, it's a much bigger issue, and there's more than just one, magic bullet, like this is what's causing the flooding. There's so many different pieces of that, anywhere from lake levels, which impact a lot of our flooding, to an early spring when you still have ice on the river, to way too much impervious surfaces all around us. So that's part of the reason, that's the main reason why we're introducing this, because we can do as much as the city chooses to do for green infrastructure on the city-owned properties. But we want to encourage it on private properties, because we cannot do it just on city-owned properties to be able to have a long-term solution for water quality and for some of the flooding issues.
well, my son lived in Texas in an area where there was a lot of the issues with the hurricanes. And he said where he lived was what was called a planned community. And so they had like drainage ditches around. They had to go, when there was the hurricane, they had to go away for about 2 weeks. They came back and everything was fine with their house because they were surrounded by all these drainage ditches. So that's why I was thinking, isn't there something like that that the city can do? And obviously that's not really the purpose of our discussion here, but it's just something that, I just feel like.
Green infrastructure in and of itself is not the magic bullet that's going to resolve flooding. It's another tool in the toolbox to help chip away at the stone.
I just have a quick point. Just give me a second. I just wanted to ask, with these impermeable surfaces, for a company to come in and say, hey, I want to put pavers down. I mean, that's an expense. So, they would incur that expense, I would think. They'd have to weigh the benefits,
And again, as Melissa alluded to, there's an expense to put down asphalt for a parking lot. There's an expense to put down brick pavers, permeable pavers. Or there's pervious asphalt, there's pervious concrete. You don't have to go to a paver, okay? There are ways to do it using other more traditional modifications on traditional building materials. But to put a pervious parking lot in, there's a cost. To put a non-pervious in, there's a cost.
I'm talking about.
There's probably an upcharge with the pervious. But with that pervious parking lot, as Melissa alluded to, you're not paying your stormwater fees on that parking lot, which every 3,000 square feet of impervious surface is another ERU, which is another $125, $127 a year, right? Okay? When you start adding up a parking lot for Aurora, Bellin, okay, you're talking massive areas of asphalt. tens of thousands of dollars in stormwater fees a year. It
So
becomes that
you have to
that
weigh it.
business.
You have to weigh it.
Yeah, they've got to do the financials, but the additional cost of a pervious parking lot, when you look at a 15 or a 20-year lifespan on a parking lot versus the reduction in stormwater charges, might
That-
make it worthwhile.
I was thinking about the permanence of a parking lot that's been there for 20 years or something, but if they were gonna redo it, then that
Sure.
might be the time to think about it.
And
Right.
they're going to redo it, okay?
Okay.
Procter and Gamble.
Sometime they.
Procter and Gamble's gonna repave their parking lot because the asphalt's worn out. They need to repave the
Okay.
parking lot, okay?
I never thought of that. That's
When
good.
they repave the parking lot, the zoning ordinance says you can't put the parking lot back the way that it was. Every so many stalls, you have to have an island for trees, okay? You gotta meet the landscaping requirements, like Alder Campbell was talking about. Okay, well, I gotta lose parking stalls because I gotta put these islands in, and I gotta have trees, and I gotta have this, and I gotta have that. Hey, tell you what, seeing as you gotta put that in anyway, instead of draining the water away from it, if you drain the water towards it and let the water soak in, that helps water the tree or water the shrub, and it cuts down on the amount you're running off, so you can save water, you can save money on your stormwater runoff charges, and will count that feature that you need anyway towards your stormwater or your stormwater management requirements on the site. Again, all we're doing with these code audits, we're opening the door for folks who want to use it. There's no mandates, but it provides that guidance to folks.
Right. It'd be
And
nice to see,
by clarifying what we're doing, providing that when we talk about incentivizing, what we're talking, again, it's not necessarily a financial incentive. What we're doing is we're connecting the dots for folks. If you do this, it counts for both this function and this function. Get maximized.
Aren't you grandfathered in if you have a parking lot?
Nope.
You have to add the
The
green
the minute
space?
you pull the asphalt, you can pull the asphalt off and put new asphalt down. The minute you touch the gravel underneath it, you trigger it in and you're required to meet the ordinance as it exists at the date.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is for reconstruction
that's
and not for resurfacing for parking lots.
Okay.
This would be for reconstruction and brand-new parking lots for the landscaping standards.
But-
There's a lot of other reasons, why a company might want to do this regardless of that incremental, if there is an incrementally higher cost to it. There's companies that are already doing this and we don't even have this stuff in place. American Food Groups has a permeable paver parking lot. If you go, it's on the corner of Webster and University, kitty corner from the fire station, where American Food Groups, they have their health center. That whole parking lot's permeable pavers.
And they did it.
They have it. They didn't, maybe it's part of their stormwater plan. I don't really know because I don't review stormwater site plans as of yet. But, yeah, people are doing this. St. Mary's Hospital, they have a green roof. They have what other,
I've been there.
I can't,
It's
well, we
cool.
have to open the floor if we're gonna do this, but St. Mary's
Yeah.
St. Mary's Hospital, they have several different types of green infrastructure
Okay.
at their facility, and I'm sure
Can I
there's
talk,
more.
please?
Yeah, just direct to me and I'll say, go ahead. Go
I
ahead,
did it
Alder Campbell.
3 times ago.
I'm sorry.
So, all these towns that you said, that you use for examples, all these big cities, understand, you hardly see anything green down there anymore, you know what I mean, as far as a tree or plant or whatever, you know what I mean, because it's all concrete everywhere you go. And some of them, they have Wauwatosa and some of them, but are they still optional or are they mandatory now? Are they ordinances? And is this gonna turn into that someday?
I think there's a misconception, okay, so
I'm asking.
we need to clear that up. Just because it's an ordinance doesn't mean thou shalt. There's no mandate in the ordinance. They're 2 separate items. An ordinance simply says, here's the rule.
Just wanna make sure we're comparing apples for
Yep.
apples here.
But an
Big cities,
ordinance.
little city.
Well, Green
We're
Bay's
not a
the
little
third.
city.
Yeah, we're not. We're the third
We
largest
are-
city in the state.
Well, according to all the election things, we're a little city.
Yeah, I
compared to
know,
big city,
but when we
right?
talk
So,
about,
we're
one of the
talking
things you're
cities.
talking about, Alder, is
Government.
the concrete jungle, we're there. That's what Alder Eck was just talking about, flooding issues. Why are we flooding every rainstorm at Mason and Main? too much impervious surface. The way the storm sewers were originally laid out and designed assumed certain conditions. The way the city developed wound up with a lot more hard surface than what the original designs were. And I'm sorry, there's no way, we came up with a plan, but just to handle the flooding at Mason and Main involved a sewer that was gonna come all the way back to the Riverside Ballroom. And 3 years ago, when we brought that forward, it carried a price tag of $30 million. And that was just to take the puddle at Mason and Main away. It didn't do anything else anywhere in the city. It solved one flooding issue, 30 million.
Then how much would that have dropped? Not much.
It would have taken the water, that $30 million option would have taken the water out of Mason and
No,
Main. We'd have solved the problem, but it was 30 million. Okay, how many areas, how many hot spots around the city do we have like that? 40, 50?
Well, when Main was redone, I owned a property on Main Street there, right by Riverside Ballroom, the whole block across the street. And that whole street was redone, the bridge, everything, all the sewer work. I remember, I know the people that did the job, okay? A lot of the fill went to my backyard, to be honest. And if I remember right, that was brand new all the way down to that corner. Why wasn't it addressed then?
We didn't have the same type of storms that we have now. The nature of precipitation is also changing. When I was young, we had storms that lasted 6 and 8 hours. Okay, we're not seeing those anymore, and that's not me saying that. I've been preaching the gospel according to Steve for years, and it's only been within the last 4 or 5 that we're starting to see concurrence out of nationally recognized organizations like NOAA and National Weather Service, okay? So the same stuff that our city staff has been preaching for a lot longer, we're getting concurrence on not only a regional but also a national basis, that storm precipitation events by their nature are getting higher in intensity and shorter in duration. So you get in these big cloud bursts where a whole bunch of water comes down at once and then in an hour it's over. So the way we designed sewers years ago was because the storms we had years ago, that same amount of water fell, but instead of falling in 45 minutes, it fell over the course of 8 hours. That one pipe, you got to use that pipe multiple times because the water would get into it and it would leak away, and then more water would come in as it fell over a longer period of time. Now you get this huge gush, it all comes down, it can't get into the sewer because the sewer's full and it backs up and ponds.
Okay, Attorney Mather?
I just want to go a little bit further into the explanation about the ordinance question. So anytime we refer to our code or changes to our code or anything like that, we're talking about ordinances. So this is a change to the code, this is an ordinance. The question about whether something is mandatory or not depends on how the code or the ordinance is written. So if we use words like a developer shall do this as opposed to a developer may do this, a shall is mandatory where a may is permissive, meaning you don't have to do that. So in this case, it's an ordinance regardless. It's just a matter of, like Steve said, they're not all shalls. It's just if you do it this way, these are this is the results, but you also, if you're going to do this green infrastructure, then you shall do A, B, C, but not you shall do the green infrastructure. Does that help a little bit?
Right, so.
Sounds like one pushes it into the other, but yes.
Well, as Attorney Mathers is, if you're going to use a biofilter, you have to design the biofilter according to the DNR standards. Or you're not going to get credit for putting a biofilter in.
What's
So
biofilter?
if, then else, okay? So the mandate portion, if you want to use a biofilter to achieve your stormwater management goal, you can do that.
Explain that, the biofilter. You asked.
Like Melissa showed you with the plants and letting the water leak in.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I thought you meant it was something in a storm
No,
sewer.
bio plant filter, right?
Okay.
So we rewrote the code to allow green infrastructure, but we're not going to accept. You can't just call it green infrastructure and it's green infrastructure. If you're going to use green infrastructure, you have to design it to nationally recognized standards. That way everybody's on an apples to apples comparison.
I hate to do this. Can I take like a 1-minute break? I mean, I'm in trouble.
Yep.
You're the chair.
I'm the chair. I can. I may. Well, so do we have to, can I just run and come back?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just say we're
We can
sorry.
handle
We're in
it.
recess.
I'm older.
I
I'm
can
older
call
than
on
you guys.
myself then.
We've lost a
we can
quorum.
open
You're the vice.
When he leaves, we've
Yeah,
lost
I'm
a
the vice.
quorum,
You're the
so we
vice.
can't consider the
Take over.
continue the
Take over,
discussion.
Captain.
They're not listening to me.
No, you can.
There's a few different specific wordings that was nasty.
You could. Go ahead.
I make it.
There, that's not-
And then that one too.
Oh,
That one clicked, so I know that one
Today.
huh?
went off.
I should tell everyone, even though we're recessed, I don't know if we've stopped the recording.
We have not.
So we're still on the record.
Yes.
So just be aware of that. Doesn't mean you can't talk, just it's gonna be recorded.
People will hear us. Which is.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask, Director Grenier? I don't think that I've met this gentleman that's sitting here.
Oh, I'm sorry. You wasn't with us the last night. Jim Burnett is the Assistant Director of Public Works. Alder
Okay.
Melinda Eck, Alder Stephen Campbell.
Right.
Nice to meet you.
I'm sorry, you should have warned me at the beginning.
Well, yeah, we kind of dove in and then I was like, oh, and I know who that was.
Grab
so-
something relatively
Thank
soft
you.
off and throw it at me.
Get a little plushie.
You guys keep asking so many questions. Anyway, good questions. So, are we back?
We're back in session.
We
Okay,
finished while you were gone.
Julie,
You have to open the floor.
yes, motion to open the floor? I'll make the motion. Second?
Second.
Second by Campbell. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, come forward, state your name and address.
First, and then-
I was thinking the same thing. Did we have
What?
to close it and then open it? But,
No,
okay.
I don't
Staff
think
can
we,
speak without opening the floor. I
Yeah.
apologize for doing kind of an on-the-spot training as we're
That's
going.
right.
I'm just trying to answer the questions.
Oh, no, we were saying,
It's
did we have
better
to
than
close
none.
it from
Yeah.
speaking to her?
No, she's
before
a city
closing?
Staff,
employee.
staff can
Melissa-
speak.
Melissa's
Okay.
staff.
Staff.
You don't have to open the
Oh,
floor.
okay, all
That's
right.
An attorney.
There we go.
There we go.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for opening the floor. I appreciate it. My name's Julia Nordyke. I'm at 3221 Nicolay Drive. And I am here in an informational capacity. I work for the University of Wisconsin Sea Grant Institute, and I'm a water quality and coastal communities outreach specialist. And so I work with communities on the Great Lakes with the code audit a lot of the time. So I can provide information. I think I had notes jotted down of points that I wanted to build off of, but I think Steve literally said every single thing that I had, like down to even green infrastructure is really thinking of it as another tool in the toolbox, a newer one. And our codes and ordinances generally weren't created at a time when we understood the impacts of water runoff in the cities, and those codes and ordinances are very outdated across our country. So in terms of this code, the City of Green Bay code audit process, I was really just involved up at the beginning of it. So I've done a longer presentation at the Sustainability Commission that would be on video. I presented to the City Council about the code audit briefly, also in 2019, I believe, about the process. I helped with the previous city staff, Celestine Jeffries. We held a workshop for city staff at the beginning of 2020, right before everything closed down, and that brought together all the different departments to talk about green infrastructure and find out what benefits there were for staff. I think the only thing that I just wanted to talk about just really briefly, the one point about the audit process, because I work with many communities and I still am, working with communities I'm hearing stories about communities outside of Wisconsin using this tool, is that it really is we come at it from a very no judgment approach. So every community, every municipality is really different. and has really different goals and visions and different needs. And so there's not like a code that's like one size fits all that mandates anything or doesn't mandate it or incentivizes it. So during the code audit process, what you're hearing is the results of 2 years of the consultant helped point things out, but that consultant also worked with city staff to understand what was the barriers specific to the city of Green Bay and what would be acceptable. And so what you're really, these results that are being presented are things that staff have worked together that they feel that is really relevant and applicable to the city of Green Bay. So yes, there are communities that may mandate green infrastructure, but that's not what they're presenting because that's not what would be the best for the city of Green Bay based on their experience. So you could do that if that's up to the council or the town board or whatnot like that to decide really. But what they're bringing forth is just removing those barriers again. So I just wanted to let you know that this is really coming from the ground up from the city, and it's going to be unique and different in every community. The codes that are amended are different for different communities. Like the city of Superior is different than what is done here because they're all very different in general. So
You find that the cities that are like Superior's on the water, we're on the water, Madison's, well, they have water too, but I'm just saying some of the internal cities, like, inner city, not inner cities, but the cities that are within the state rather than on the water, is there anything different that you found, some of your research, because we're on the Great Lakes? I don't know if I'm asking
I don't
right.
think so. I mean, the only, like, the main difference generally is like coastal zoning regulations, but
I'm just saying
I don't
that
know
there
if
might be-
that's
Yeah,
like a niche.
the coastal issues
Yeah.
are more related to wave run-up as opposed to
Yeah.
water quality.
Yeah.
Water quality is an issue for everybody. Water quantity is an issue for everybody. We may be blessed with having too much, okay? Other areas which are more central to the state are suffering through droughts, they don't have enough. So they may be looking to implement green infrastructure to harvest runoff to supplement what they're not getting, okay? Maximizing the use of that water, reusing it for multiple things as opposed to letting it go down the storm sewer. Whereas we may be looking to implement GI type activities to stop that water from getting to its receiving body so quickly. Again, a lot of stormwater management, it's time management. That's really, if you're gonna take stormwater management and break it down into one thing, it's time management. By slowing that water down, the first water to hit the ground and hit that storm sewer has a chance to get out of the pipe, which opens that pipe up to be used again. Everything we do, a pond, a stormwater pond, one of the biggest functions of that stormwater pond is to hold that water back until that pipe can empty out, and then I'll leak that water back into that pipe over a long period of time after the initial runoff is gone, okay? While it's doing that, it lets particles settle out. That's the quality function, okay? You're removing the pollutants because the pollutants are stuck to the soil particle. And the longer you let it sit, the more, think of stirring up muddy water in a glass, the longer you let it sit, the clearer it gets, right? Same thing with a pond. The longer that water sits in the pond, more particulate falls out. But by delaying that water and holding it in the pond, that storm sewer has a chance to empty out, and now I can meter that water out over a longer period of time, reduce flooding, okay? So 99% of what we do in stormwater management is time management.
And so some of the major differences with codes and ordinances in general with the communities is really depending on development. So like downtown Green Bay has a lot different stormwater management issues than maybe your subdivision areas. So, City of Superior didn't even have a subdivision ordinance. That was, so in general, that was an issue for them. But they also had they did a nuisance lawn one to make sure that, when people were doing native vegetation, it wasn't just, they were just letting their grass overgrow, stuff like that too. So it's really unique to each community, and it's based on what the goals and visions and how green infrastructure can help complement those things in stormwater. And green infrastructure is really dispersed. They're smaller site level practices, and it just captures the water where it falls mostly. And one of the benefits that hasn't been mentioned is you know, it's to help reduce the pressure, the time off of the gray infrastructure. That's really important to managing stormwater in our systems too. So it can reduce stress on the gray
So Julie,
infrastructure
you're fairly
system.
satisfied so far with the research and things that have been done with the city and then with your department and that? Do you feel like things are moving along?
You know, again, I haven't really been involved in the staff discussions, but based on what I've read through them, and I trust what they know, the staff, the municipal staff knows the best. And as you heard, it's gone through many cycles of review. And so they know down to the T. They touch the codes and ordinances. They have to implement them. They have to enforce them. They have to deal with the effects if they're bad codes. So I completely, I stay at what their recommendations would be. When I read through the stormwater stuff, I mean, it is what they said. It's really two things just stood out to me. It's adding definitions. Like, these types of practices weren't around when the codes were developed. And then also, it's a lot more just like clarifying and making it easier to implement the stormwater ordinance. So it's actually better for the developers and people developing because they have clear expectations and guidance. So it's pointing people in the direction of technical standards that exist through the DNR so they can meet their stormwater permit. The city will get credit for doing this actually through their stormwater permit, which was beneficial to the city directly too, because they're required to make progress on these things.
All right. Wonderful.
Credit from
Go
who?
ahead.
The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources.
Okay.
So, and in southeast Wisconsin, so that district where a lot of the municipalities, Melissa said, they're actually, that regional DNR is requiring in the MS4 permits down there that municipalities reduce barriers to green infrastructure. So, because they've all had code audits down there, to be able to get credit in there, to actually meet their stormwater permit, they're requiring them to reduce barriers. And this is one way to do that, so.
So the DNR is involved with this too, right?
And EPA.
And EPA.
Yeah.
So with the southeast part of the state, I mean, it's more densely populated. There's a lot of different, companies. There's just a lot more there. So so you were saying that they're held to a different standard somewhat, that they have to kind of comply because of a lot of that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're not quite there yet?
No, and I think what Julie's getting at goes back largely to what Alder Campbell was talking about. Land is at such a premium in those more heavily, densely developed areas that you really can't take land out of service to put a pond in. Okay, so the old way of doing things needs to have something else. We need more tools. So if you put green infrastructure in, you gotta put an island in your parking lot, make the island a negative feature instead of an elevated feature, and we kill two birds with one stone. You get the tree in there and you infiltrate groundwater, not have it run off, okay? Every bit chipping away at the stone, you're accomplishing multiple objectives with your development. And if space is at a premium, if land is too expensive to take it, I don't want to dedicate a whole lot of area in Green Bay to ponds because that's tax base we're taking away. That pond becomes a city-owned piece of property and we're never gonna collect taxes on it, okay? A certain number of them, yes, because that's also a nice feature that if somebody wants to go sit on a park bench and watch birds land in the pond, beautiful, you got that too. But you can't have a one-size-fits-all. We got to be able to, to balance everything and get the best combination of factors to accomplish the regulatory objectives.
Right. Well, how many, do we have a number on the number of ponds that we have in the city right now?
Oh, we do. I don't have that number with me.
That's quite a bit.
We do. There's quite a few.
Okay.
So that one behind Schreiber's then, is that a Main Street drain off?
Yes, the runoff from Maine does go into that facility.
Yeah, and I think Schreiber Foods does have a small rain garden. They have a rain garden.
No. I think what Alder Campbell is talking about is our Morrow Street.
Yeah.
The floor's still open, so.
Right.
Any other questions for Julie?
Sorry. Yeah, no, not for Julie.
And then,
Okay.
I encourage you, even Festival Foods has like the biofilters, so I think if you just start, when you start going places, whether it's Appleton, you're gonna start noticing when the water is from a parking lot or a street is being filtered into like plant medium rather than down a storm drain. So
Okay.
now that we've had this long discussion, St. Mary's Hospital uses, I believe, from what I remember when I took a tour there, they said they put in their green roof in exchange for more parking, part of their treatment train. So they have a green roof that's open to the public. They really believe in the natural
It's in my
spaces and-
district, I've seen it, it's amazing.
and
actually.
public health. They really are tying those things together. And they also, in the parking lots, use bioretention, which is basically just a small little area that, like a depression that has plants that infiltrates the water in the ground, into the ground. So,
Thank you, Julie.
Well, I don't know if this is my spot.
Well, let's
But I-
close the floor first. Motion,
For her?
motion to
No,
close the floor.
for the two.
Okay, motion to
from
close the floor.
Okay.
Motion by Campbell, second by Eck. All in favor, please say aye. We just have to
Aye.
do that,
You can ask.
because now you can talk to staff.
I have nothing.
For the staff, you know?
No.
Okay, I do.
Okay.
Okay, these are specifics to some of the wording changes that I just wanted to, I guess, ask about. Like you've got change instead of Director of Public Works, it's just Director, and then, is it just to shorten it? Is there,
Yes.
okay.
I believe, Melissa can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we added that to the definitions where director is defined to be the Director of Public Works.
Okay, yeah,
So
I think,
then the references throughout the rest of it are just to director. Just, when we did the recodification, we really just tried to eliminate basically words we didn't need that were just extra. And so one way to do that was to just put the definition of director up in the definitions and cut down on the extra words in other places.
okay, and then there was one that said, instead of the City of Green Bay, it was crossed out and just said Director.
Oh, what
Yeah,
What
can you?
page?
Oh, okay, I'll look it up. I know I looked through this at home, so let me just
Sure.
find it here.
In some situations like that, if it just says, like, if the City of Green Bay determines or something like that.
Yeah, no.
What page are you on?
It's within General Ordinance XX-22. It would be on the bottom of page, near the bottom of page 6 is one. And with that, the maximum extent practicable applies when a person who's subject to performance standard under this article demonstrates to the City of Green Bay's satisfaction. That's the way the code used to read.
Yeah,
That didn't say who at the City of Green Bay made that determination. Now, that determination is vested in my office, or with my office.
okay.
So
I
it's
just wondered
this-
if it was like taking it like away from, it didn't say City Council, but just clarifying what that changed.
No, there was a staff member who works for the city who's responsible for making that determination, but the document didn't say who that was. So, who's accountable for that? Now it vests that with a certain position, and by director, going back to the earlier definition, that could mean me, or it could mean somebody that I give that, I have the ability to designate that authority to Melissa.
Okay.
It just provides the accountability chain.
And I believe it's the last thing that stood out for me is changing man-made to human-made. I take exception to that, so that's my thought.
Changing what?
Man-made to human-made.
We
Oh.
updated all of the, in chapter 44 as well as this with just generalizing it instead of saying man-made. That's pretty standard language nowadays to say human-made rather than man-made.
Because I mean, man-made is not necessarily a woman or man thing, so, and I feel like some people maybe think that it is, but it's not. So that's why I wanted to ask about that.
When we did the recodification, one of the efforts that we did make was to make the code gender neutral. And so instead of his or her, it says their, things like that. And so this was was something, just another way of cleaning up language that has kind of fallen more out of parlance, and to use something that's more general, gender neutral.
So all of the documentation that you've done has been changed to that?
Yes.
All of our ordinances, if you were to go on the city's website and look up all of the ordinances in the city, they were all changed to be gender neutral. So what Attorney Mather is saying is when this one was done, to make it consistent with all of the other ordinances in the city, that was done as well.
I just did, the thought of spending a lot of time on something so small to me seems
Okay.
a little over the top.
All right, anything else?
On this issue,
Yeah.
Yes.
I just want to compliment everyone here that spoke today, and, I may seem a little harsh, but I want detail, and I think I got what I needed.
Absolutely.
From the very first meeting that we were in, when we were just sworn in, this was presented to us in the Army, and it was pretty hard to consume that day.
Well, that was the Sustainability Commission, right?
Right,
Right
right.
off the- right off the bat.
Sustainability Commission, right? And I must say, you've broken it down to where you can understand it now, and actually, I don't remember who moved it to committee, but, that's the right process, and, learned a lot. You gave us a lot, and I just want to commend you all for that. I learned a lot, and there's a lot of definition here,
That's well spoken. I concur with Alder Campbell as well. So,
Well, I'm a big
so
believer
now,
that you can't make an informed decision if
No.
you've not been informed.
No, I mean, we
Really?
were like,
Education is a big part
come
of
on
it.
now. You guys are like
That's-
this
that's
big
what-
up there, we're like that,
Open up the
right?
funnel and pour it in, yeah.
But this is
there's
like,
a lot.
my wife's gonna say, what'd you talk about today? I go, well, I'll tell you.
Yeah. You got you got 2
It's
hours?
It's on video. No, it's 3.
Yeah,
It's
there
on
you go.
video.
It's 3 so far.
Well-
But I must say, that's from us, the committee.
I
Yes.
concur. So, I would, unless anybody else wants to add something, committee, what's your pleasure? I mean, I could,
What's the motion that we wanna,
well, the motion, it says consideration of possible action to approve the text amendments to, and the ones that are on here, to approve
the
those.
code changes?
So that's basically all we're looking at. And it may or may not be pulled at council, but we're the committee. It's going to go to council, but we're just considering that to have possible action on this to approve or not. So,
I would make a motion that we,
To approve as written.
to approve as written before our presentation to the council.
Steve, how would you word that?
Just a motion to approve the text amendments is fine.
Seems
Just-
to be-
The rest of that's implied. And then again, just for your knowledge, with the recommendation to approve, then these text amendment, the actual text will also appear under ordinance's first reading.
Right.
At
So we have
council.
a couple of readings.
So you get our ordinance's first reading, you have the ability to advance those to a second and final, and then 2 weeks, about 3 weeks from now, at the second council meeting, it'll go through a second reading, second and final for adoption. So you got 2 more opportunities to discuss them.
Right. All right, so a motion, and we have a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Eck. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that passes. Thanks again for everything on that. All right, we're not done yet, are we?
No, but now we start picking it up.
Good.
Should.
Yeah, we need that. Consideration, number 8, consideration with possible action on the review and award of the following contracts. Do you want to do these individually?
If it pleases the committee, I think if you read all 4 of them in, then I'll give you a recommendation on each of the 4, and then if you agree with the recommendation, you can accept all 4 with a single voice vote.
Okay.
Or you can separate them and be your
I'll read them.
pleasure at that point.
Would you prefer? I
That's
could read them all.
fine.
I'll read them all.
What he said.
Yeah, I gotta read them in though. So
Okay.
A, Bridge 3-22 Ashland Avenue over CN Railroad, Canadian National Railroad, and 6th Street, B-5-018 Expansion Joint Reconstruction. B, Bridge 4-22, which is at Monroe Avenue over East River, B-5-255 expansion, joint reconstruction. C, Pavement 1-22, Roosevelt Street reconstruction. D, WSG 1-22, water heater replacement. Staff?
Okay, Bridge 3-22, again, that's Ashland Avenue over the Canadian National Railroad and 6th Street. The expansion joints at either end of the bridge are being replaced this year. We received 3 bids. Low responsive bidder was Norcon Corporation in the amount of $388,674. So we would recommend award to Norcon in that amount. Bridge 4-22, Monroe Avenue over East River expansion joint reconstruction. Again, we received 3 bids. Recommend approval to the low responsive responsible bidder, Zenith Tech Incorporated, in the amount of $193,285. Pavement 1-22 is the reconstruction of Roosevelt Street. This includes pavement, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and water main reconstruction. 4 bids were received. Recommend award to the low responsive responsible bidder, PTS Contractors, in the amount of $3,126,000 even. West Side Garage 1-22 water heater replacement. We received no responsive bids. So we simply want to record that no bids were received, contract is not being recommended for award.
Now, these have all been bonded for?
Yes.
Yes, these have been bonded for in the past, okay.
This is all 4 projects are part of the 2022 capital improvement program that was approved by Common Council.
So what happens if you don't get a water heater replaced? I mean, if you don't
Hope is
get
not a good strategy, but right now we're hoping. We're actually going to rescope the project and try to figure out why we didn't get any bids. We simply think it's that the plumbers, this isn't a water heater like you have at home. I mean, this is a massive water heater. Right now, contractors are overloaded with work, and with supply chain issues, we think that the project timeline that we had proposed, they may not be able to meet. So we want to reach out to a couple of prospective contractors, ask them specifically why we didn't receive bids, redo the bid to address some of those concerns, and put it back on the street.
So when we're voting on this, what do we do with that one? Take that out?
What you would be doing is you would be approving the 3 contracts for the contractors in the amounts that I had indicated, and for the 4th contract, it would be a recommendation not to award because we had no responsive contracts.
So make a motion to accept all of these awarded contracts?
Sure.
Approve.
A motion to approve?
Yeah. Both 3 and then the one.
3 and then hold off on D?
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll
Just
second it.
For the sake of clarity for the minutes, I would recommend that those be 2 different motions. The
Okay,
motion to approve
all right.
and then the motion.
Why don't you just,
Okay.
do the first one.
Motion to approve A, B, and C as written, awarding the contracts.
Okay,
I'll second it.
second, okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes, and then,
Motion to wait, to not award, or to hold for the
No,
water.
to not award.
To not award the water heater replacement.
okay. Second, do we have a second?
I'll second
By
it.
Campbell, any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
So you can't like second or make a motion?
Well, I
Chair, just-
can,
Just to clarify.
normally I have in the past, but a lot of times I defer to the committee.
Okay.
But I can,
Who's
I'm not
the-
afraid.
Our ordinances do specify that when possible, the chair is not supposed to be the one that makes or seconds a motion.
Yeah,
But
Okay,
it can be done
In a
when it's
pinch.
necessary.
okay,
okay.
all right, good to know.
Just want to keep you guys there.
I'm the vice chair, so I might have to step in, but
Oh,
I need to know.
yeah, that's true. That's true. All right,
You're not coughing today, so you're good.
that's good. Number 9, report of actions taken by Department of Public Works. A, granting of licenses. Do I read this? Sidewalk
Yes.
builder, Scott R. Widener Concrete Construction LLC. So we,
And we can take these collectively.
Okay, and then number 2, underground sprinkler system, A. Fox Valley Irrigation, Inc.
So both contractors have held these respective licenses in the past and performed satisfactory, so staff has already granted their operating licenses for 2022. We're simply reporting this out, so a motion to receive and place on file would be appropriate.
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file.
Okay, by Campbell. Do we have a second by Eck? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay, we're getting there. Informational, Director's Report on recent activities of the Public Works Department.
2 minor items to bring to your attention tonight. Spring yard waste collection is wrapping up. I know we get a lot of requests from residents that trickle down through the alders that weather wasn't cooperative. Can you please talk to the Department of Public Works to have them extend curbside yard waste collection? While we would love to entertain those requests, unfortunately, we can't do that. As you get in and you spend more time here working as an alder, what you're going to find is, much like I was talking about stormwater, reusing that pipe multiple times, those same staff do multiple jobs. So the same folks who are collecting yard waste at the curbside during the spring operate street sweepers. They're also the crews that do pothole patching and crack sealing. They're also my plow drivers. So we're into summer patching and crack sealing. While I'd love to go around and collect yard waste, I've got roads I gotta maintain, and the same equipment, the same bodies who do the collection do that pothole patching. So we're on to summer maintenance. We gotta go. So spring yard waste collection is wrapping up. And we'll be into summer activities. Just another little bit of advice or information for you. We have closed registration for No Mow May. We are now at May 11. And we have 1,078 folks who registered for No Mow May. So it was a lot more popular than even we thought it was going to be this year. So first year in the program, we'll continue to monitor, get feedback from folks who are participating, possibly tweak or modify the program to work out better for folks next year.
I don't know if this would be copyright infringement, but a friend of mine sent a sign saying "No Mow May," and it had a picture of Curly and Larry. No Mow May.
So that concludes the director's report.
Yes, all right.
And just to kind of add, give them the address for the yard waste places. That's the solution, right?
Yeah, right, it is.
And so I make a motion to adjourn?
Well,
first
let me,
wait,
just,
oh.
hold on.
Receive
We're
and
not.
place
I'm
on,
skipping ahead.
Yeah, so we gotta
Sorry.
receive and place on file the
So
director's report.
why don't you, go ahead.
Motion to receive and place on file the
Okay, by
director's
Peck?
report?
Yes, and then we have a second.
I'll second it.
Second by Campbell. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, next we have, the next Improvement and Services Committee meeting is scheduled for May 25th, 2022. Now, will that be at 5 o'clock again?
That will depend upon Parks Department. Just for your edification, the way that it has been recommended to us by law department to identify start times of the meetings, because we don't know how long Parks Department will go. We both the Parks Committee and the INS Committee will show a 5 o'clock start time. However, the INS Committee will then say immediately following Parks Department, which starts at 5. If we state 6 o'clock or immediately following Parks Department, which starts at 5, and Parks gets done in 10 minutes, we would have to actually wait because 6 o'clock was the published time. By having the coincidental start times, then immediately when Parks finishes, we can immediately start up our meeting. So don't get confused by that. It's going to say 5 o'clock immediately following Parks, which begins at 5, unless Parks doesn't meet in case, in that instance, we would go on.
Right, but we do have public hearings on that too. Does that-
Well, if public hearings occur, public hearings, because we have to publish a Class 2, I believe Class 2 public notice. All these terms you're going to have to get used to. Class 2 public notice means it has to be published 2 times, at least a week apart, the second of which has to precede the activity by at least 7 days. You got 2 weeks advance notice we have to do, and we have to publish it in the newspaper, so you can't change the time, okay? So when we publish, to make it consistent, when we have public hearings are at 6 o'clock. So if we start the meeting at 5 and we're going along, like tonight, we're almost 20 after 8. At 6 o'clock sharp, if we got a public hearing that night, we will suspend the rest of the meeting where we're at. We'll stop in the middle of discussion on that item. We suspend the meeting, stop right there, open the public hearing, conduct the public hearing, conclude the public hearing, go back to the regular order of business, and pick up where we left off.
A lot of fun.
Just little things
Yeah.
it's
You'll get-
organized chaos, just don't think about it too much and enjoy the trip.
Well, and we saw that Parks was canceled, which.
Right.
I don't know what happened
Disappointment.
there,
We
but
wanted-
Lack of items.
lack of items, okay, well, good to know.
Okay.
Just saw, oh, it's not on there.
All right.
Well, I
Thank
got
you.
some now.
All right, we need to make a motion to end this.
Oh, now I can
Yeah.
make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, by Eck.
All seconds.
Second by Campbell. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Thank you,
We are
everybody.
adjourned.
Very interesting and